You are on WHBJ Digital Talk.
And good evening, everyone. Welcome to WHBJ Weekend Review. Got a couple great episodes of Steel City Resistance lined up for you from back in January 2011 with Ward Miller. And I decided to take a risk back in 2010. And man, for me, the show hasn't stopped. But guess what? He may visit the chat room tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Keep an eye open for Ward in the chat room. The number one first initial guy that I ever did talk radio with in a serious manner. Good stuff. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we've got a couple episodes that are each a little over an hour long. So we're going to be here for just a little longer than 2 hours tonight. I'm Hutch Bailey Jr. from WHBJ Digital Talk out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Let's get back to business and listen to Steel City Resistance, episode number 5.
I thought we were the protectors of truth. Democrats, Republicans, you all lie. We, a small band of survivors, are on our way to the Steel City to find the resistance. Join us.
Welcome to the Steel City Resistance with Senior Airman Ward Miller and the ironclad voice of Pittsburgh, Hutch Jr., laying down verbal C4 to blow away the lies and the political tomfoolery. Your papers have been cleared. Welcome to the Steel City Resistance.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode number 5 of the Steel City Resistance. This is Hutch Jr. in the Bird's Eye View studio in Brookline in the city of Pittsburgh.
And I'm Ward Miller in Greenfield, Pittsburgh, PA, in Studio 1 of the Max and Life studio.
We've got a heck of a show. It was quite a week. I mean, it was some things happened this week that are going to have consequences. Just a couple administrative notes. Ladies and gentlemen, we won't be able to have a show next week. I'm in the Army Reserve, and I have reserve training this weekend, the weekend coming up, rather. If you noticed on the titles, the first few episodes had actual titles, and I decided that the way that we do the show, that one story doesn't really take precedence over another one, so I'm just going to title them SCR and then the number.
I had somebody else trying to call me.
This happens to media celebrities. But anyway, so the titles are going generic. And the other thing is, in light of the recent news and things that have been going on, the intro that you just heard, thank you very much, Mr. Briar Brown, for providing that, was de-weaponized for this episode, just so nobody could accuse the show of causing Jared Loeffner to go off. And Ward, we got an email this week, so I'm gonna jump right to that. Let's see here. I used to live in central Pennsylvania, and I emailed a friend of mine out there about the show, and he got back to me and said, "Very good, Hutch. You guys are right on. I am impressed, and I have forwarded this on to several other friends. I like the Detroit video, too. Wake up, America. The problem is that we now have more people with their hands stretched out for a free ride that can swing the votes. We are upside down, and I don't know how to turn it around again." And I wrote back to him. I asked him if I could use the email on the program. I said, "Thanks, Dennis. Do you mind if I treat this like an email to the show?" He emailed it to my house, my home email. "We can turn it around if we make it to 2012. The tax code needs to be changed so that all people share the tax burden. It can be changed with a conservative majority in both houses. In the White House, we will demand it." And he wrote back, "Go right ahead with the email. I feel very fervently that the bleeding hearts are tearing down what the country stands for: liberty, equal opportunity, with opportunity underscored, and the freedom to achieve on personal effort and merit and rewards for success. More people need to understand that progressives are nothing more than communists. That is, in fact, true. Good, honest people do not need more government. Good, honest people don't mind paying their fair share of taxes. As indicated in the attached photo from my property, I am a Tea Party backer. And he sent a picture with the, I forget the name of it, but the Don't Tread on Me flag.
Yeah.
I am all for a flat tax. Wouldn't life be great without the IRS? But I don't see the lawyers ever conceding. One more thing. If you are armed, you are a citizen. If you are unarmed, you are a subject. So thank you, Dennis. Appreciate that. If anybody else wants to email the show, it's steelcityresistance@gmail.com. And now on to the news. I think.
Oh, well, wait, didn't we get a voicemail? I thought we had a voicemail too.
No, I don't think so.
We had one from Bayer that we were going to play.
Oh, yes. And we will play that shortly. Because,
okay. I knew we had one from Bayer that I really wanted to address, but yeah, we'll do that in a little bit.
I think the biggest, we'll do it right after this segment here, but I just don't have it open. I forgot all about it. Thanks, Ward. Something happened this week between the last show. If you recall, the last show, we were just getting the breaking news about the shooting in Tucson. And, man, the media just came unglued this week. I mean, to the extent that I'm not sure that they're really a valid outlet anymore. I mean, they just...
No.
I'm used to spin.
They've become a puppet of the progressives. And, you know, whatever the progressives say or the Democrats say, that's what it is. And the way that they treated this tragedy that happened in Tucson was just, it was out of hand. You know, before they even knew anything about this guy, and we're going to talk more about him, but immediately it was because of Sarah Palin and Rush Limbaugh. That sheriff down there in Tucson needs to, you know, be ousted. Because before the dust had even settled, he was immediately, you know, attacking Tea Party people. He was attacking Sarah Palin. He was attacking Rush Limbaugh. Instead of waiting to find out what this guy's deal was, it was automatically their fault.
I mean, I'm used to the spin. That doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, we know that the majority of the old legacy media is left-wing, far left-wing. But when they come out and they start lying, when they know they're lying, the facts are in front of them, and they're accusing people of being responsible for murder. I mean, straight up accusing them day after day after day. And the evidence came out pretty quickly about Jared, and it was all unfounded. And they're still doing it today. They are still trumpeting all of this ridiculous, backwards accusations when they, in fact, the left, the media, and not just the media, but the left is by and large responsible for some of the most hateful, violent speech in America today.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you know, the president was quoted as saying during his election campaign, if they bring a knife, we bring a gun. You know, there was lots of that type of violent rhetoric at that time, and the media's given them a pass on that. And you know, the media's given every, you know, it's like if you do something that's not in the progressive vein, you're wrong. You know, it's just totally wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. It doesn't make sense. Blah, blah, blah. You hate America. You're a racist. You know, and insert adjective here. And it's all garbage.
And I mean, even without I think there's no dispute that the left is spewing hate, and they have been, the media and the politicians. But I think the big picture, the big story is this is the first time, and I could be wrong, but when everybody in the media, in the legacy media, has gone from spinning things to lying. And I mean, I think that's unprecedented. And I think that there are a lot of Democrats, of, not the hardcore communist Democrats. I'm not talking about all the way to the left, but just guys that go to work, like we've talked about many times on the show, that are looking at this going, no, man, this is out of control. This has to lead to bankruptcy almost. I mean, I don't see how the New York Times and NBC can continue to get advertising with garbage like this. And maybe I'm just too optimistic, but I mean, my goodness, man.
Yeah, well, one of the things is the thing that gets me is nobody's willing to stand up to them. They're real quick to attack Rush Limbaugh, and they're real quick to attack, Fox News and whatnot, and Bill O'Reilly and Sean Hannity. But the bottom line is their job is to create a political opinion. They're an opinion show.
Yeah.
They're not a hardcore news show. Now, and I feel that way if I were to watch Bill O'Reilly, I'm getting his opinion.
Sure.
Or Sean Hannity, I'm getting his opinion. When I watch the nightly news, I expect to get facts. I expect to get hardcore, this is the way it is, facts. And it's not happening.
And the thing about it is you have to have that objective media outlet for America to work. If it was not for Fox News, I mean, I don't know what direction this country, where we'd be. Because it's obvious that, first of all, it's obvious that there's collusion amongst the networks. I mean, all you have to do is listen to an episode or two of Rush Limbaugh or anybody else when they put the montages together about whatever the topic of the day is, and all across all the different networks, they say the exact same phraseology. I mean, it's so that means it's bigger than just one network. But I'm thinking, what if Fox News never came around? Or maybe, I mean, what might have happened if Fox News never came around because of the advent of the internet, maybe all regular network media news would be going down. I don't know. Well,
most of it is. I mean, if you look at any of the polling, most people don't get their news from traditional news sources anymore.
Right.
I'd be willing to say over 50% get most of their news from the internet. Now, that being said, that doesn't mean that it's right.
True.
Because
true.
Anybody can write anything on the internet. I could bring up a web page that just says that strawberry ice cream is the best on the planet, and I'm not going to argue, but, you have to take everything with a grain of salt, no matter where you get your information from, whether it's from Fox News, whether it's from MSNBC, whether it's from, the internet, whatever. Everything has to have a grain of salt, and you have to, and instead of being a sheep, think about what they're saying. Do some research. Don't take things at face value. That's what this is all about. Hutch and I, when we started this show, it wasn't as much, and we said this in the first episode, it's not that we're super conservative and this is a super conservative show. What this is about is thinking for yourself and getting people not to be sheep. Because, and I have a great quote for today, because we're recording this on Martin Luther King Day, and Dr. King said, "A man who won't die for something is not fit to live."
There it is.
So think about, whether you agree with what they said, you disagree, look it up, do some kind of research. The thing about this Jared Lautner and the first thing that they said was, well, it was Sarah Palin and the Tea Party and Rush Limbaugh and blah, 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 blah. Well, that's already been discredited.
Right. And they do it every time. I mean, it's not the first time. With the bombing of the Oklahoma City Federal Building, they did the same thing. And they actually did the same thing to Dr. King. If you look at the headlines in the 60s, before the big march, before the March on Washington, Dr. King was being accused of causing riots, and he was going to, don't ever come anywhere near D.C. if he comes here, and it was horrible. And they did the same thing then. It was just a different agenda that the Democrats had at that time.
Exactly. And, well, here's my thing. The first thing now that's been discredited, and they said, oh, well, I guess we can't blame Rush and Sarah Palin. Well, what can we do to really destroy the democracy? I got it. We'll attack the Second Amendment. The reason that this massacre happened in Tucson was because this guy was able to buy a gun. And I got into an argument. I'm not going to say argument. I got into a discussion on Twitter with this guy. And he was a big, proponent of repealing the Second Amendment and all this crazy stuff. And his argument was, well, look at the crime rates that they have overseas.
That's
as far as with gun use. And I said, okay, here's the deal. They were never allowed to have guns. The toothpaste is out of the tube, dude. There's nothing you can do. The fact that you want lawful, law-abiding citizens to register their weapons, I can understand that. You want to know where the guns are. However, I wasn't able to find a statistic on this because I wanted to bring it up, was how many crimes are committed with unregistered weapons? The criminals are still going to have them.
Absolutely. They have them in the countries where they're banned.
A crime, they're going to put a gun in their hand. Here's the way you fix it. And the liberals don't want to hear this. What it is you reinstitute capital punishment. If you commit a crime with a gun, any crime, whether you shoot, whether you fire the gun, if you have the gun in your hand, if you have a weapon on you, when you commit a crime, you get the death penalty. Period. And you start enforcing that, your crime rate drops dramatically. But right now, as it is, they want to handcuff the law-abiding citizens who want to protect themselves and give guns to criminals, because the criminals are going to have them regardless. If you'd put a ban on right now and say nobody else can buy a gun, that's going to stop crime. You're out of your mind.
The whole Second Amendment. I mean, I'm not for toughening anything. The gun laws are already too tough. I mean, and we don't enforce them anyway because of what you said. I mean, the people that register the weapons are not the people committing crimes, a vast majority. The whole situation, the guy did it. The gun didn't do it. If there would have been 18 more people out there that were packing, he would have got off a couple rounds and that would have been it. The guy that was coming out of the Safeway had his hand on his gun when he came out, but he saw that they already knocked him to the ground. But, I mean, that guy could have got 5 gallons of gas. You know, I mean, the gun didn't do it. You know, that's like saying that the pencil misspelled the spelling word, you know?
Exactly. I mean, but my point is this, all these people that Chuck Schumer just introduced some kind of
course he did.
Legislation today, about because of the Tucson incident. And we have, the Democrats' thinking is so flawed. And the first thing is we got to do something.
Well, it's back to Rahm Emanuel and never let a good crisis go to waste. I mean, that is, in fact, the way they roll. They have these things. They're in their desk drawers waiting for an incident to happen.
Yeah, well, the thing is, excuse me. The thing is, like I said, we can't regulate weapons to the point where criminals can't get them. Criminals are going to get them. So what you do is you enforce. I mean, and that's why they don't have all the gun crime overseas that we see here, is because over there they don't blink. They don't have these bleeding heart liberals that are going to say, "Oh no, you can't put him to death. He had such a hard childhood. He killed people." And if you want true, gun control, and you want to control what happens with weapons, what you do is you say, if you commit a crime with a gun, it doesn't matter if you fire that gun or you don't, you will be put to death. You rob somebody and you have a gun in your hand, you are put to death. And because sure as hell that they're doing that overseas. You rob somebody in some of those Islamic countries, they cut your arm off.
Yeah, they do.
Well,
back to the go ahead.
No, that's just the one thing that drives me nuts. It's, we got to put we got to increase the gun control, and it's because of gun control that this guy got a weapon. No, he was going to get a weapon anyway. Whether it was he went and bought a Glock or he went and found a ball bat, he was going to do damage that day.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of different organizations dropped the ball on this guy. I mean, they did. It's coming out more and more each day. I mean, his friends were saying he was half a whack job, and the people we went to school with, the college police had run-ins with him 5 times.
Well, in the college he went to, supposedly sent 4 law enforcement officers to this guy's house to tell him that he had been expelled,
right?
Because he was batshit crazy. Nobody's willing to take crazy moron as an excuse for what he did. It all has to be it's a right-wing conspiracy. Well, let's back up for a second. His 2 favorite books were The Communist Manifesto and Mein Kampf.
And I found that out the very next day. I mean, it wasn't like this took a lot of digging. It was right on his YouTube page.
Yeah. So now that kind of shoots down all of your, he was a Tea Partier. The Tea Party doesn't really believe in the Communist Manifesto, nor do they believe in Mein Kampf.
Right. I mean, a classmate of the man accused of shooting Congressman Gabriel Giffords, Congresswoman, describes him as left-wing and a pothead. And I mean, there were other people that said he was apolitical, pretty much, that he wasn't on the right or the left. Anyway.
Yeah, but just because a congresswoman and I don't want anybody to think that I'm making light of this. Had he gone wild and shot a bunch of people at the Safeway before she was there, doesn't make him any less crazy.
Right.
She was his primary target, and he didn't care who he hit next to her. And while that was a tragedy, it was a tragedy that was created because this guy is out of his mind. It wasn't created because Rush Limbaugh sent him secret messages. And, if you play Rush Limbaugh tapes backwards, you hear that he is the Antichrist and all this other, commie crap that comes out of the New York Times or the MSNBC. You get down to the facts. The fact was he was out of his mind. He went and got him a gun, and he went and did bad things with it.
And MSNBC and New York Times and everybody else, you lose. Nearly 6 in 10 Americans say the country's heated political rhetoric is not to blame for the Tucson shooting rampage that left 6 dead and critically wounded Giffords. And that is by a CBS News poll. So there is a happy ending to it anyway. But I don't know about those other 4, the 4 in 10.
Yeah, but the thing is, it took so long for them to go, this is what the problem is. And
I mean, the president went like halfway to telling them to stop. But if he would have called him out instead of being, he was a little bit vague, you know what I mean? Like, okay, let's all sides calm down. No, the right is not doing anything. I mean, heated rhetoric is America. They used to settle this stuff with duels. You know what I mean? That's what it's about in America.
Well, the thing is, too, when the president went down to Tucson for the memorial, that wasn't as much memorial as it was almost like a campaign stop.
Oh, it was horrible. The message was good, but the way it was...
I mean, he's handing out T-shirts. What the hell? I mean, you don't use this for a political grandstand. And there was 9 people that were killed, that were gunned down. One of them, luckily, thankfully, and apparently Congresswoman Giffords is handling the treatment well, and she's looking like she's going to make some kind of a decent recovery. They're still tentative, but she's doing some of the more complex things now, which is awesome. And like I said before, on this show, there is no, I don't believe in Democrat and Republican, especially when it comes to something like this. That was a U.S. citizen that was shot. That was an American there was 9 Americans who lost their lives, and it was done by a crazy person.
And the only Democrat Republican side of this story is the way they reacted. That's all I'm saying. Is that
you're absolutely right.
You can't let that go. That's not something that's un-American what they did. They lied, and they knew they were lying, and their bosses knew they were lying, and their corporate headquarters knew they were lying, and it continues. I just don't see it continuing much longer. I don't know. Well,
I'm hoping that people are starting to wake up, and that's what I sort of see.
Yeah.
I see more and more people starting to wake up and go, you know what, that just doesn't make sense. Like the amount of spending that we do every year, everybody said, well, when Bush did the TARP thing, oh, look at all the money that Bush is spending, blah, 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 blah. And Obama comes in and does it not once but twice with twice as much money. Where's the media?
And then
where's the same media that was screaming that Bush was spending all this money and putting us so deep in debt that it was, un-American? But yet Obama comes in, his cronies do it twice, nothing is said.
And I listened tonight, and I'm listening to a commentator, and he's talking about how Obama is ready to get this budget under control, and he's really ready to buckle down and do what has to be done. And I'm thinking, what? After these 2 years, how can you even say that? I mean, how can you even seriously bring it up that you're ready to take care of the budget and get the deficit under control after you just exploded it?
Well, yeah. I mean, he was the guy who said that we had to spend our way out of a recession. Spending your way out of recession is kind of like screwing your way out of prostitution. It really doesn't work like that.
Okay, well, I think we wrap this segment up. You got anything else on, Jared? I think we're going to listen to Bayer.
The way that they're treating our country, I feel like my own government has made me public enemy number one. Being an American to them is a dirty word or something like that, or that's how they're selling us off to the rest of the world. The fact that they're being apologetic about what? Because we've been successful? Are you kidding me? The United States president don't bow to nobody. I don't care, we can be a guest. Well, it can be all smiles and chuckles, and we can eat all kind of foreign weird foods. I'm not breaking my knee for you. And then have the audacity to send their people here to get an education here, have the audacity to have us pay for their education, and you can't even send your own kid to school without mounting up piles of student loans. Makes it hard for you to even have a good credit later on, which I never understood the fact that you can pay back your student loans, but it doesn't even apply positively to your credit score. Although if you default on it, it can crush you. You get these other people from other countries coming in, they can open up a store, they can open up the 7-Elevens, do whatever. They go tax-free for I think it's 10 years. 10 years goes by, and then they get their brother to come in, and now he takes it over, and he gets another 10 years tax-free. And you're going to tell me you have no thought of this? You don't see the pattern in this, and you're not going to stop this? Where's those tax dollars? Why are we sending money to all these people? How about send the money back that you were supposed to give us in the first place?
And some good points, Bayer. I don't know why we do half of the stuff we do anymore. It does seem like it's to go counter to American culture.
You're absolutely right. And once again, it was the media not a lot of the stuff that Bayer was talking about was a lot of the stuff that the media never talked about. Had Bush done half of the things that, like bowing to the Saudi king, the American president bows to no man.
I mean, right in their psyche, progressives don't like themselves, and they certainly don't like the country. And I don't know why that is. I'm honestly, other than the power hungry thing, I'm leaning more and more toward it being a mental disorder. I mean, how could you not like your own country? And they are very apologetic. And he did bow, and he did go and go overseas and say how we had made so many mistakes.
Yeah, and the thing is, what mistakes did we make?
I mean, our history is not perfect, but I mean, you got to understand in this world that there's so many different cultures, and some of them are violent cultures, and we've had to deal with people, and there's collateral damage. I mean, this happens. I mean, there's not a whole lot of people trying to beat down the gates to get into Saudi Arabia. This is the only country where they do that. This and some of Europe. I mean, the Islamification of Europe is almost complete. Yeah,
and they're pushing more and more every day. It's just it irritates me to the point. It used to be. You look at the stuff. I mean, there's been progressives around forever, right? Since Woodrow Wilson.
Yeah, 100 years.
And even the progressives and the lefties that were in the country during World War II, they were still Americans. They still stood up, and the Democrats, Republicans, after the attack on Pearl Harbor, there wasn't a delineation as to who was, there was more Republicans that went and signed up than Democrats or whatever. It was somebody attacked our country. It's time for us to go.
It was like September 12th here. I mean, you saw the same thing. You saw American flags lining every city street in the country and in front of every country guy's home. I mean, that's just the way it was. It went away pretty quickly, especially when the war started going a little south and it was time to get tough. But, I didn't realize the situation with the college loans. I didn't realize that didn't benefit your credit rating. I didn't realize that. I have
it impacts
noticed
your credit rating, but it doesn't help it.
Right. I didn't realize that. I wonder why not. It's almost like the legal loan sharking when you buy a house. I mean, a mortgage is a criminal thing.
Yeah.
It really is.
I got an announcement that I wanted to make real quick.
Absolutely.
There's a petition online. They're trying to get 5 million signatures to repeal the Health Care Act now. It's being one of the endorsers is Mike Huckabee.
Yeah, I've seen that on television.
If you go to www.repealhealthcareact.org, you can go and you can sign the petition, and afterwards it asks you to donate money. You don't have to donate money, but it would be awesome if all of our viewers could go, or listeners, viewers, all you guys could go out and sign the petition. Let's get 5 million signatures so that they can go take it to present it to Congress to say, look, there's 5 million American people that say that this is wrong. We can't afford it. Obama's talking about now how he wants to balance the budget. Well, number one is let's not take a sixth of the American economy and try and figure out how to pay for it. They're doing crazy math. They're doing all this garbage to tell us, to force feed us that we need this health care bill. And
right. Maybe we'll put something on the website about it. And if all of our listeners go and sign that, then they'll only need 2.5 million more. So that's right. We'll be right up there. Good idea. Yeah. I was wondering if that was the real deal because the commercial kind of looked cheesy a little bit, and I was thinking about doing it, but
no, I went and I signed it today. Huckabee is the one actually pushing it. I went and I checked it out on his website, and there's a link to it. They're really pushing for it, and he's going to be one of the front runners in the next presidential election. It's going to be between Huckabee, Romney, and Sarah Palin.
I'm not sure. I think there's some people that are in the wings here that haven't really spoken up yet. That I don't personally. I would like to see somebody new, somebody that's not. I mean, I like all three of those people, but I'm nervous that. I mean, if they come in there, they got to come in there with
guns blazing.
Yeah, with the Constitution in their right hand. I mean, because we've gotten so far away from that it is going to be a long slog to get back.
Well, you know what? In fact, let's think about this for a second. Let's back up and say, okay, we know those three are a given, that they're going to be running. Who else would you like to see run?
Who would I like to see run? I would like to see Chris Christie run. I would like to see Newt Gingrich win.
You just read my mind. I was thinking Christie.
I like Christie, but I don't think Christie's ready yet. I take him at his word when he says he's not ready to do this yet. I think that somebody and he probably won't get elected, but one of the things that I like about Newt Gingrich is a deep thinker. He doesn't come with slogans. He comes with plans. If you Google him or whatever, you can look. He's got a 5-step plan, and one of them is the reality that we have to get back to manufacturing so we can compete with India and China. And a couple of the stories coming up are going to touch on that a little bit. But if we have to make something, we can't sit here and just be making websites
and being importers,
right? I mean, and if we don't have a plan, and it's not just a plan that you say, okay, build a factory. I mean, we got to incorporate this into our education system. It's got to be. China's producing 30 times more engineers a year than we are. I mean, we have to fix these schools. I mean, really fix them. Not just. I mean, I don't know if the days of the public school are over. As far as
the thing is, it's not a matter of just throwing money at the school.
No,
because that's what a lot of people think is. Well, it's because there's the schools are overcrowded, which they are. Throwing
the money at the schools is throwing money at the teachers' unions. That's
exactly.
What's going on there. That's a black hole, and that's where the money goes.
Exactly. And the thing is, too, there is a what's the word I'm looking for? A sentiment, I guess, within the schools now that if you achieve and if you do well, you're attacked.
Yeah.
These other kids think that, you're just trying to be smart, and they make the smart kids the dumb thing to be. It's better just to cruise through high school or grade school or whatever.
Play baseball.
You don't need to get good grades. If you get good, I mean, and there's been cases where kids who get good grades are getting bullied by these people that just don't want to work.
I'll give you an example. Just look at the memorial service at the University of Arizona. Look how those kids reacted. They said they were listing the names of the victims who were killed, and they were applauding. I mean, it was horrendous. It was. I can't believe that and it was the university president too. He kicked it off like, let's get a shout out for President Obama. It was like, this is a memorial service. You don't clap at memorial services.
No.
But it was, I don't know. And they were yelling slogans and I love you. And oh my God, these are somebody's kids.
It's one of them things where, there's an old saying that says you can't teach class. And that's the truth. They have absolutely no class. Whether or not I agreed with, the people or not, if I lived in Arizona, I would have attended, because I think that what happened was an American tragedy.
Certainly.
And it had absolutely nothing to do with politics. And the fact that Obama used it as a political stage sickens me.
And I mean, I don't think that he did it. Like, I don't think he orchestrated, although the icon on the T-shirts was from Organizing with America. But he looked actually like he was stunned at the crowd's reaction. I mean, he was looking at the ground during some of it. It's like he knew it was inappropriate.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
why didn't he say something?
He should have. He should have.
He should have stepped up.
He should have said, stop.
That's the time when you're a leader that you step up.
Exactly.
And when you see something that people are taking advantage of a tragic situation, you step up and go, that ain't right.
Right.
That's what a leader does. And that's why I respect the office of the United States president. And I will continue to respect that office. I don't have to respect that man. And I have no respect for him as a leader, because a true leader would have stopped it immediately.
Yeah, he should have.
He should have stopped the entire thing and chastised the students or whoever it was who were making a mockery of people who got, who were assassinated. A 9-year-old girl.
Well,
what the hell's wrong with these people?
Just out of respect to the family members that were in the front rows.
Absolutely. I mean, it's all a matter of class. And this is just getting me worked up.
Well, due to time restrictions, we're going to have to move over to Asia. This out of Beijing. North Korea's development of nuclear weapons and long-range missiles poses a direct threat to the United States, Defense Secretary Robert Gates said Tuesday. A blunt assessment of the risk posed by an erratic dictatorship that considers the U.S. its foremost enemy, right next to South Korea. They forgot, but like I said before on the previous episode, don't worry about what you got to watch here. Is you got to watch the South Koreans. South Koreans are fed up with provocation and harassment from the North, Gates said. I mean, North Korea recently sank a South Korean Navy ship, killing 46 sailors, and fired artillery at a disputed island in November, killing 4. Now, you can't expect them to take this for much longer.
No. I mean, and I don't know if it's the United States asking our ally to stand down.
Oh, I'm sure we do every time we go there.
Because it was very similar to during the first Gulf War. Saddam thought that he could break up the coalition by drawing the Israelis into the fight, because all of the other allies from Saudi Arabia and whatnot, he knew that if the Israelis were to come into the fight, that they'd bail.
Yeah, and they would have.
Yeah,
that was
we had to go to Israel, and say, look, stand down. We'll give you a missile defense system. We gave him the Patriot missile defense system, and said, okay, when he launches the Scuds, we'll just blow him out of the air. And that's what we did. And we forgave some debt. I mean, it cost us a lot of money to keep Israel from just going, you know what, we've had enough. And
they might be getting close to that now with one of our next stories coming up.
Yeah. Well, the funny part about that is I was watching the news yesterday. Was it yesterday? It was either yesterday. It was one day this weekend. And they were talking to one of the ambassadors from Israel. And they're asking him like operational questions. Like, this guy's going to tell you,
right?
Is it true that the Israelis and the Americans got together and they created this computer worm that basically overspun the Iranian centrifuges? And this guy's like, no, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Of course not.
Exactly. And they ask these questions like they expect, operational detail. Yeah, of course we did. Of course we did. We joined up with the Americans. We created a computer virus, and I can't remember the Stustics or Stusnuts or some crazy thing. But apparently what it does is you have to spin the centrifuge in order to enrich the uranium. What this virus did was cause the centrifuge to spin faster and burn itself up.
I love it.
But it would send data back to them saying everything was going at normal speed.
Cool.
So it basically cooks it basically cooked the what are they called? The
uranium.
Well, not the uranium, the centrifuge.
Oh.
It basically just fries the centrifuge because it spins so fast.
The motor.
That it just destroys itself.
Jeez, man. Well, the part of the plan to establish military bona fides of leader Kim Jong-il's son as his chosen successor is given for the reason behind a lot of this muscle flexing. But I want to preface the next story with something that just came into my head, Ward, so it's not on any of the wires. But do you remember that missile that disappeared from the news that was fired out of the harbor of Los Angeles?
Yes.
That just kind of went away, and that's not something that should just go away. But it did. It was erased from everything.
Yeah, it was never explained, or somebody said, "Oh, it was a gas, pocket or some crazy shit."
It was a missile. I've seen missiles. I mean, I've never seen an ICBM.
Yeah.
But Chinese President Hu Jintao disses the dollar, says U.S. system is a product of the past. This is a shaky thing here. And the reason I say that is what he's talking about is currently the U.S. dollar is the world's reserve currency. If you buy something from between countries, you have to buy it in dollars. I mean, it's basically the currency of record for oil and other different commodities. And what he's basically saying is he wants the Chinese currency to have a bigger play in the world economic system. And what that would mean to us, it might be a good thing. It would be painful at first, but we wouldn't be able to just print dollars, see. Now we can just print dollars because ours is the world's reserve currency. Nobody else can do that. We're the only people that can do that.
Until it starts to devalue.
Which it's going to. I mean, unless we get our house in order. I mean, he called the present U.S. dollar-dominated currency system as a product of the past. And, I mean, we have their biggest problem with us is our relationship to Taiwan. We sell arms to them, and Taiwan has a pretty stracked out military because of us. I mean, I don't know if they could stand up to China. I don't think they could. But,
no, there's not enough people in Taiwan.
But what they want to do is, I mean, one of the things that the politicians in Washington want to do is get China to appreciate its currency. I mean, their currency right now is depreciated by the government to enable us to import everything, and it's just it's a mess. And they make me nervous. China. I was listening on a show the other day that had a couple billionaires on. I don't know if they're billionaires. It had some successful international business people on the panel, and this one guy, he moved his whole operation from the United States to Singapore. Singapore has the world's freest economy. We're number 9, believe it or not. We are number 9. Can you believe that?
Yeah, because between the unions that strap, that tie the hands of the people that own the place, it's one of them things where, because I got to pay this guy, and we'll use, Detroit as an example. One of the reasons that, Detroit went downhill was because the unions came in and said, oh, well, this guy puts on the lug nuts on the front left wheel. And so he gets $35 an hour. Well, the guy that puts on the rear wheel, he gets $47 because they're more important or some crazy shit like that. And so that's why the price of cars is just insane, because the unions basically price themselves out of work.
I mean, and it goes even deeper than that. If car sales aren't really going this month, we take all those people that were needed on the assembly line and they go into job banks and they get paid anyway. And the original idea behind that was that it saved the intellectual capital. We would always have people that knew how to do this. But I mean, it's out of control. It is.
But one of the things too is, and nobody looks at taking another step back. Look at the big picture. Okay, if I own an assembly line, and I'm the owner of Ford now, right?
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I'm the owner of Ford, and I kick the damn unions out, and I say, okay, you want a job? You got to come here and you got to work. That's what I demand. I demand you come in, you put in an 8-hour day, and I'll pay you for fair wages. However, because I don't have to contend with all the union garbage, this guy comes in to work every day. He gets a decent wage. And because of the money that I'm saving from not having to pay that additional money to the union, I can reinvest it back in the company and make his job easier.
I wish the steel mills would have done that, huh?
That's what happened to the steel mills. The union came in and said, pay us.
No, I know, but they didn't reinvest in they still had to open.
And they never put that money back into, had they done that, would Pittsburgh be where it is today? I don't know. But you're exactly right. That's a perfect example of the non-reinvestment of the money. You're making this kind of cash. You start to make the money. I've said it before. Labor unions are a thing of the past. They're dinosaurs.
Yeah. The thing about China, just not to change the subject, but to get back to China a little bit, 2 things. The panel was asked, what's the best advice you could give Americans right now during this time? And this guy shook me to my core. He said, teach your kids and your grandkids Mandarin Chinese. And he was dead serious. And that shook me a little bit when he said that. And the other thing is, the biggest imbalance between China and the United States economically, the biggest problem is software piracy, I forget what they called it, intellectual capital or whatever. There are companies that have big-time software that runs, I don't know, a whole steel mill or whatever. But these companies are getting downloads for updates from people that never bought the software.
Yeah.
Absolutely. A stunning amount of these downloads for upgrades.
I have a friend of mine who works for Microsoft, and he was telling me that in Russia, you could go on street corners. They have little booths set up on street corners. you could buy any Microsoft product you want, shrink wrapped, for $5.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about Windows and stuff. I'm talking about a big time.
Yeah, but I mean, you look at the amount of money. How much money do you think it costs Microsoft when an entire country can just go buy their product for $5 off some guy?
Yeah, that's true too.
You know, I mean, and that's intellectual property that's owned by the United States, that's owned by Microsoft, that's stolen every single day.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
You know, yeah, and you're absolutely right. And there's too many countries out, and because a lot of these countries don't recognize our copyright law and our intellectual property law, it doesn't matter.
And we won't.
They can steal whatever they want.
We won't go after somebody like that, but we'll fine a lady $1 million for downloading some songs. You know?
Yeah, she downloaded 12 songs, and it cost her like $1.25 million. And the thing is, they were happy about that, and that's the exact thing I'm talking about, because the RIAA, which is the Recording Industry
of America,
of America, something or other, they have enough money that they can go and they can prosecute a single mother, and instead of saying, okay, well, let's go after the Russian syndicate that's stealing the intellectual property of Microsoft, or go after, whatever, insert country here. There's bad guys in every country, and there's going to be, that kind of stuff happens. They make money from it. So if they steal the copy of, well, we're going to say Windows, and they steal one copy, they make 10,000 copies, and they sell them for $5 a piece. They just made $50,000.
Yep. That's
clear profit.
Now, the next story that we're going to talk about is something that's not being reported, and I'm not going to get too deep into it. I just wanted to bring this up because it's not being reported anywhere else. I don't know if you're aware of it, but around the world, it just happened recently in Iran. Iran just rounded up 70 Christians, and Christians are being persecuted all over the world, at least in the Middle East and in Africa, and it's getting no news at all. I mean, absolutely none. Iranian authorities see the unregulated Christian gatherings as both the potential breeding ground for political opposition and suspect that they may try to convert Muslims in violation of Iran's strict apostasy laws. They see Christians as hardline missionaries who have inserted themselves into Islam like a parasite. And, I mean, this is happening in Iraq. In Iraq on Christmas, they blew up a Christian church. It's happening in Egypt. The Coptic Christians are persecuted and subjugated there. And I just can't understand why we can have so many conversations about the rights of Muslims and the rights of other people, and yet Christians are never mentioned unless it's as a dirty word.
Well, and the same thing goes here too. When they were wanting to build the mosque in New York, if you had anything bad to say about it, it was just because you were a racist. But let a Christian group say, well, we want to do this, and they're attacked. Now, I can't stand. I can't stand by, and Hutch, I've made a habit of calling a peg, and when that moron down in Florida said he wanted to burn the Quran because God told him to,
well, he's an idiot.
He's an idiot.
And there's your media again. There's millions of loving Christians in this country, and that's the guy they choose to take the camera to. That's by design.
Well, it's between him and the moron that goes out and protests military funerals.
Yeah. And,
I would love for him. I would love to be at a funeral where that group showed up.
Well, there's a bunch of guys that go out there and they block them.
Yeah, the
Patriot Guard,
Rolling Thunder, I think it is.
Yeah, and the Patriot Guard. A friend of mine, a big guy, was part of that, and he'd go every time.
And God bless him.
Yeah, definitely. What else is going on here? You want to talk about an ineligible president?
Yes, I do.
I figured you would.
a lot of times people think, that the birther thing, it's, oh, you just want to see his birth certificate and you don't think he was born in this country, even if he was or wasn't. This new argument is kind of interesting because there's a group that's trying to repeal the Obamacare law because they said that he was never qualified to become president. And here's the reason. It's not a birther thing. It's by his own admission. Mr. Obama was born to a father who is a British subject and a British citizen, and Obama himself was the same. The term natural-born citizen is defined, at least since 1758, as a child born in the country of parents who are both citizens. Only one of Barack Obama's parents was a citizen at the time of his birth. In this case, his mother was a U.S. citizen. Therefore, based on that definition, now this is not being a birther, no one can dispute the fact that his father was from Kenya, and at that time, Kenya was a British colony. So at that time, his father would have been British, his mother was American, therefore he does not qualify as a natural-born citizen.
Jeez, we'll see how much legs that gets. I don't know.
You're not going to hear nothing about it.
I don't even know if I want to.
No, but
can you imagine if we went down the road? Can you imagine if it went to the Supreme Court and he was deemed ineligible to be president of the United States? What do you do next? Give it to Biden?
Yeah,
it would be.
I honestly think that's the only reason he chose Biden as his running mate.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Because he's the only person on the planet who could be worse than him.
But yeah, I long ago gave that up. If they were going to do something about that, they should have done it before the election. It's too late now.
Well, they're still. It's still tied up in court.
I don't know that the country could handle it. Is what I'm saying. I don't know that. I just don't know that wouldn't be the incident that set the country off right there and allowed this shadow government of czars to take over. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it is what it is. There's 30 unvetted people that are in huge positions of power right now that we don't even know. And if it wouldn't be for Fox News, you'd never know about them. If it wouldn't be for Glenn Beck, I wouldn't know who Cass Sunstein was.
Well, it's not only that. It's, how much money are they making?
Right.
And what I thought was funny was when Gibbs stepped on, Obama's thing was, well, he's leaving because his job doesn't pay him enough money. He was making $175,000 a year.
That was arrogant. I couldn't believe he said that, especially in the middle of an economic crisis like we're in, where there's people getting $500 a week just to survive.
Exactly. How do you consider $175,000 a pittance?
Unbelievable.
And they were the words he used. He doesn't make enough money. It's a pittance. And somebody actually looked it up and said, well, Gibbs makes $175,000 a year.
Jeez. Well, Ward, we got time for about one more story.
All righty.
So I think we'll go to Lebanon and kind of tie it in with Tunisia. The Lebanese government collapsed after Hezbollah ministers resigned. Now, this is not a good story for Israel. Hezbollah is a terrorist organization that, if you've watched the films, that a lot of them in the media are painting it like Israel's the culprit. But these guys straight up launch mortars into some of Israel's border towns.
Every day.
It's horrible.
It happens every day.
And now there's chaos there. And in an aside, in Tunisia, which is in Africa, the government dissolved there too. So I think that there's a lot of, incidentally, they dissolved the government, took over the country when their president was here. But
I think that he knew that it was coming.
You think so? I didn't, because that was the first I heard of it. It wasn't being reported.
No, of course it wasn't being reported, but I'm sure he was here, and it was one of them things where he knew it was coming, and he's probably here and he's getting asylum and whatnot because they're going to overthrow his country, and if he were to go back there, he would be executed.
Yeah, and he tried to give them concessions like, hey, I'll retire in 2014, and I guess what I've been hearing lately as I'm researching a little bit is there's a lot of other Middle Eastern countries that have despotic rulers that are getting nervous because this is just from the grassroots. This wasn't Muslims. This was just people that wanted more freedom. And they found out that the guy had lavish spending habits, and his wife was like Imelda Marcos. And
yeah, but the thing was, Hezbollah didn't do it for that.
oh no, I'm not talking about Lebanon. I was talking about Tunisia. Right? You're right.
You're absolutely right. Tunisia is one of the poorest countries on the planet, and when you have the that type of leader that's basically flaunting the fact that they're spending the little bit of money that the country gets on themselves. Yeah, I could see where that's the issue. The thing with Hezbollah, they're just bad. They're bad people,
and they're backed by Iran and Syria.
And yeah, they got lots of money coming in. They got lots of weapons, and there was a war that lasted about maybe 2 weeks. About a year ago,
where Israel actually invaded.
Where Israel countered because I have friends that are Israeli, and part of my job is I have to talk with these guys, and they told me point blank. He says, "Dude, we're attacked every day," because I was supposed to go over there for this. It's kind of like a project kickoff thing. And I'm like, I'm not going over there. I'm a great big white American, and the last thing I'm the promised land for them.
Right.
If one of them
talking
Hezbollah
72
guys
virgins.
If they can get a round off into me, they're happy as a clam. So they get a shot at America, and they're going to love it. So, and I'm a great big fat guy, so I'm a huge target. So I just decided, I'm going to pass on that.
Probably a good idea. Well, we wish them luck, but I don't know, did anything good ever come out of Lebanon? I mean, I can't remember last time I saw a Lebanese car or something, but
no, I think they make goat cheese or something.
I've heard a story that an idea that traces all this Middle East violence that we're seeing back to the toppling of the Shah in Iran. That before that there was a relatively calm period. I mean, there was some terrorist incidents here and there, but nothing like all these people you see in the streets, burning the American flag and the Israeli flag. And maybe that was a bigger event than we gave it credit for at the time.
Yeah, well, then you look at right at the same time was what was his name? It wasn't Sadat, it was the other guy.
Where?
He was the president of Egypt.
It was Anwar Sadat.
Was it Sadat?
Yeah.
Oh, it was Begin was the Jewish
Menachem Begin was Israel, yeah.
Yeah. So they had the peace treaty between them and Egypt, and shortly after that, he was assassinated.
They whacked Sadat, yeah.
So, it's one of them things where, I hate to say it, that entire side of the globe's all batshit crazy.
Yeah, they are. I mean, it's not that they're crazy like insane. It's just that their culture. I mean, until we can admit to the fact that segments of Islam are actively at war with everybody else, we're never going to get to the bottom of it. Like Alan West said, we're going to be chasing our tails until we can identify and define the enemy.
Yeah, and here's the other problem too. And if you think about it, it doesn't just because they're into Islam, and they're a fanatical Islamist or whatever. A fanatical anybody is somebody to be wary of.
True.
Whether it's fanatical Christian groups. You look at what was the name of that cult that Jim Jones did down in Guyana. Yeah. He got them people together and got a cult, and they went down there, and then he ended up killing them all.
That was the last time that a U.S. congressman was killed.
Yeah.
Before this latest incident.
But I can't remember the name of the group. But, I mean, it's the same thing. You have these fringe religious zealots.
I don't think it's fringe. I don't think it's as fringe as you think it is. I mean, there's thousands of people in the streets in these demonstrations. I mean, it's not fringe. It might not be all, which I would never say it was all. How could humanity be that bad? But I think that there's a sizable portion of these populations that are part of this. I do.
I don't know. I like to think that there's, looking for the best in people, and I like to trust in people. But the more and more, it's like the old W.C. Fields line. The more and more people I meet, the more I like my dog.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they did a survey with British college students, and 40% of them thought it was okay to kill for Islam. I mean, all right. Hey, with that, Ward, we're going to have to wrap up another great week of Steel City Resistance. You can call the show, 412-254-3750. Email the show, steelcityresistance@gmail.com. And we're glad you're listening. Please send some emails. Give us some love.
Absolutely. Take it easy, folks.
Okay, Ward, we'll see you not next week, but the week after. And
absolutely. So you don't need me doing any show notes or anything till.
I
don't want to do anything and it be stale by the time we do it.
Right.
So.
We'll get together in a week and figure out what we're gonna talk about for the next episode. But I gotta put the uniform on this weekend. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you next time.
Let me say this, and this, I don't care about being popular or whatever. The first thing you got to do is you got to study and understand who you're up against. And you must realize that this is not a religion that you're fighting against. You're fighting against a theopolitical belief system and construct. You're fighting against something that's been doing this thing since 622 AD, 7th century, 1,388 years. You want to dig up Charles Martel and ask him why he was fighting the Muslim army at the Battle of Tours in 732. You want to ask the Venetian fleet at Lepanto why they were fighting a Muslim fleet in 1571. You want to ask the Christian, the Germanic and Austrian knights why they were fighting at the gates of Vienna in 1683. You want to ask people what happened in Constantinople and why today is called Istanbul, because they lost that fight in 1453. You need to get into the Quran. You need to understand their precepts. You need to read the Surah. You need to read the Hadiths. And then you can really understand this is not a perversion. They are doing exactly what this book says. But, all right. And I want to close by saying this. And I think we have said this all through this morning so far. Until you get principled leadership in the United States of America that is willing to say that, we will continue to chase our tail, because we will never clearly define who this enemy is and then understand their goals and objectives, which is on any jihadist website, and then come up with the right and proper goals and objectives to not only secure our republic, but to secure Western civilization. Thank you.
You're listening to WHBJ Digital Talk from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, home of Cold War Radio. You can listen live 8 p.m. Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're halfway through. That was episode number 5 of Steel City Resistance back in 2011. Then we skipped a week and we moved to the end of January 2011 for the next episode. I just wanted to mention something. Every now and then, a really simple widget is thought of and designed and manufactured. And I was at the Rivers Casino this morning. I took my wife to the excellent breakfast buffet at the casino this morning. She bought me a new computer, ladies and gentlemen. How nice. I mean, and it's even better than that. She bought me a TV. I have a 50-inch Samsung television in my bar, and sometimes it's kind of old. It was one of the first of its kind, but beautiful. And it's getting to the point where it takes a little while to warm up before it starts. It has to go through the start cycle about 10, 15 times before it'll fully activate. And so she bought me a television, and the way she delivered it or, presented it to me was she handed me this receipt. And you know how receipts are these days, ladies and gentlemen. They're 6 pages long. And I'm looking at all this techno babble on this receipt, and I can't really figure it out. And then I finally see it's a TV in my laptop. I mean, back in the day, top of the line. Even I went today, and it's got an i7 processor. And the highest I could find was an i5. But at any rate, I was hoping the cooling fan's out, the letters, you can't see the letters anymore on the keyboard. I've been doing shows on it for years. And I kind of like a little kid, I didn't catch myself. I was like, I was hoping for a computer. But she caught that. And I didn't, I shouldn't have done it. It was just a reaction, an initial gut reaction. And so anyway, she said, let's go tomorrow, and we'll go, or yesterday, and we'll, instead of the TV, we'll get something comparable, for your studio. And so I found a laptop. At any rate, I'm in and out. How I got to that, I took her to the casino for breakfast this morning, and being knowing what you're doing in the casino is always a good thing, So you go in there with less than you leave. That's the goal, and that goal was met today. So I decided when we were getting ready to leave to get a cup of coffee from Starbucks. And I mean, they have the free complimentary coffee. It's a nice casino, beautiful. But the free coffee's a little bit watered down. You know what I mean? If you're a coffee drinker like Ken, I know you're a Navy guy, so I'm the same way with coffee. And so I got a cup of Starbucks. And you know how you get the Starbucks coffee and it's got that lid on it? I think it's called a dome lid. It's got that little hole where you drink from. Well, they got this new device now. It's a coffee stirrer. It's green plastic. And it fits down inside that little hole and seals it. And there's a little Starbucks emblem, that sticks up, that you can pull it right out. It sticks up about 3/4 of an inch. And it's flat with the Starbucks little logo on there. And I just thought, damn, that's ingenious, man. That's right up there with the McDonald's Coke spoon. I don't know if you guys remember that. They made them change it. Had a perfect little spoon on it for the Coke heads. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we listened to Steel City Resistance number 5. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back with Steel City Resistance episode 6. I am enjoying this. I mean, to hear the replay of news like it just happened. I don't know if you guys like it, but if you do, please share the show, man. We need more listeners. We got to get some more people in here on the weekends. But I'll tell you, it's just really interesting to hear our perspectives back in the day. And I can tell that I'm just starting to realize the Islamic threat when I listen to myself on here. But it's great to see you guys in the chat. If you're listening to this on the podcast, we have the full archive at steelcityresistance.com. But if you get in here Sunday night, 8 p.m., it's live. I was hoping Ward Miller was going to be in the chat room. He told me he might, but he didn't make it tonight, I don't think. Maybe he will later, but definitely in the future he probably will. But I'm going to also bet that on this next episode, the intro that was provided by Buyer Brown will be weaponized in the next episode. So you're listening to WHBJ Digital Talk with Weekend Review. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
She told me her name was Stacy. She lives in D.C. She said, excuse me, but can you please pay my rent? I cannot afford my apartment. Come on, girl. She started talking about politics like a socialist. Been for too long, it runs on me, yes. This chick is nuts. She probably rides on the short bus. She reminds me of a donkey that smoked a lot of crack and got hit in the face with a frying pan. Ow! She's borderline retarded and her policies are whack. Don't try to speak with logic, cause she just won't understand. Come on! The AOC is not suitable for Congress. Nah! She's just a girl who dances on rooftops. Someone please just make her stop. Stop it, you mean ignorant.
Would you like to voice your patriotism without the threat of being censored or shadow banned? Would you like to contribute to wounded veterans but don't know how? Would you like to communicate with like-minded conservatives without being trolled? If you answered yes, then Red Elephant, rdelephant.com is for you. Red Elephant is the new social media platform that will not censor or shadow ban you, and a portion of your sign-up fee goes directly to the Wounded Warriors Project. rdelephant.com.
Hello, I'm Julie Candler with the BBC News. The chairman of the US Senate Judiciary Committee, Lindsey Graham, says his panel will investigate allegations that the Deputy US Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, considered constitutional measures to remove President Trump from office in 2017.
It's stunning to me that one of the chief law enforcement officers of the land, the acting head of the FBI, would go on national television and say, oh, by the way, I remember a conversation with the Deputy Attorney General about trying to find if we could replace the president under the 25th Amendment. We're a democracy. People who enforce the law can't take it in their own hands.
Mr. Rosenstein has dismissed the reports as a joke. Mr. McCabe told CBS Television that Mr. Rosenstein discussed how many cabinet members would support invoking the 25th Amendment of the Constitution after Mr. Trump's abrupt dismissal of FBI Director James Comey. Chris Buckler in Washington explains how the amendment works.
The 25th Amendment is a way, essentially, of replacing a president. And there, of course, has to be that mechanism in case a president dies, in case he resigns, or in case he isn't able to do his job. And it has been used in the past, for example, when people have gone for a medical operation. Temporarily, power is passed from the president to the vice president. And that's really what the 25th Amendment is there to do. But it's also there should the president no longer be able to fulfil his duties. Essentially, it needs the support of the vice president and the majority of the cabinet.
The Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaidó says he hopes to enlist 1 million volunteers by next Saturday to distribute the humanitarian aid supplied by the US and other countries, which is currently in Colombia. Mr. Guaidó says he wants a humanitarian avalanche to deliver it, but President Nicolás Maduro says the operation is a cover for a US invasion. From Caracas, here's Guillermo Olmo.
Juan Guaidó promised that the aid is coming into Venezuela next Saturday, and his American allies are speeding up the stockpiling in the Colombian side of the border. The city of Cúcuta is receiving the loads coming from the United States and visits of high American officials. U.S. military cargo airplanes began delivering food and medicines to Cúcuta. Critics fear this might lead to a military escalation.
The United Nations says the Yemeni government and Houthi rebels have agreed on the first phase of a pullback from the key port city of Hodeidah. The UN spokesperson said this was important progress, but did not give details of exactly what the Iran-backed Houthis and the Saudi-backed government had agreed to. The Red Sea port is the entry point for humanitarian aid, providing a lifeline to millions of Yemenis at risk of starvation. Moving forces away from Hodeidah was a key provision of a ceasefire deal. World News from the BBC. The Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, on a visit to Pakistan, has announced investment agreements worth $20 billion. He described it as the start of an economic tie-up that should bring the historic Muslim allies even closer. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan called Saudi Arabia a friend in need. The Islamist movement Hamas has taken full control of the Palestinian side of the main goods crossing between Israel and Gaza. Hamas has been running the Gaza Strip since 2007, but agreed to hand over control of the crossings to the Palestinian Authority 2 years ago as part of an attempt at reconciliation. The Polish government has confirmed that Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki has cancelled a visit to Israel in a row over anti-Semitism. Mr. Morawiecki was angered by his Israeli counterpart Benjamin Netanyahu, who said Poles had murdered Jews during the Second World War. Mr. Netanyahu has clarified his remark, explaining he had meant individuals and not the Polish state. Adam Easton reports.
Poland's Prime Minister telephoned Mr. Netanyahu to say he would not attend the summit, which had been organised to further strengthen Israel's ties with Poland, Hungary, the Czech Republic and Slovakia. Poles are sensitive to accusations of complicity in the Holocaust. There is evidence that individual Poles murdered their Jewish neighbours, but unlike, say, the Vichy government in France, there was no collaborationist regime in Nazi-occupied Poland. More than 5 million Polish citizens, 3 million of them Jews, died during the war.
A cash-strapped professional Italian football team has been thrashed 20-0 after fielding only 7 players, all of them inexperienced teenagers. The head of the Italian Football Federation, Gabriele Gravina, described the defeat of Pro Piacenza by Cuneo as surreal and an insult to sport. Players and staff have been on strike for 2 weeks over unpaid salaries. BBC News.
I just think he ought to be honest with the American people and try to win as the real Mitt Romney.
Meet the real Mitt Romney.
Who is the real Romney?
No one really knows who the real Mitt Romney is.
He's an enigma, and he's a dad and a family man.
Who is the real Romney?
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Can I have your attention, please? Can I have your attention, please? Will the real Mitt Romney please stand up? I repeat, will the real Mitt Romney please stand up? We're going to have a problem here.
Y'all act like you haven't seen a Mormon before. George, down on the floor. I'm not concerned about the very poor. Got it wrong. Sorry, that's not what I meant. I want every American to be in the top 1%. I'm really named Willard. That's my first name. I'm not looking for a colony on the moon, just for someone to blame. I like being able to fire people.
I'm Newt Gingrich.
You're fired.
I'm Rick Santorum, and I'm fired.
Boom, boom, boom.
Conservative women love Mitt Romney.
And I love cars. I love lakes. I'm running for office, for Pete's sake. With regards to abortion, pro-life, pro-choice, I firmly believe in my own singing voice. For purple mountains' majesty above the fruited plain.
Where are we at, John?
With regards to abortion, you can choose your own adventure. It's a Republican dimension. And I'm more concerned about the banks. They're unable to lend. Corporations are people, my friend. My dog is on the roof. My dog is on the roof.
Who let the dogs out?
Understand, I'm an exception to the Obama contraception. Not a vulture. I'm an eagle. I'm going to get my lawn cut by illegals. There will be an influx of Hispanic voters in trucks. Look, if you don't believe, I'll tell you what, $10,000? Well, I made a lot of money. Matter of factually. So I drive a couple of Cadillacs, actually. I have emotion and passion. That's a joke, for the record. But if you want the soul of America restored, come on board. Take your fair share and every Mormon raise your underwear. Sing the chorus. Papa Bear, I'm Mitt Romney.
You're listening to WHBJ Digital Talk from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, home of Cold War Radio. You can listen live 8 p.m. Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays.
I thought we were the protectors of truth. Democrats, Republicans, you all lie. We, a small band of survivors, are on our way to the Steel City to find the resistance. Join us.
Welcome to the Steel City Resistance with Senior Airman Ward Miller and the ironclad voice of Pittsburgh Hutch Jr., laying down verbal C4 to blow away the lies and the political tomfoolery. Your papers have been cleared. Welcome to the Steel City Resistance.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Steel City Resistance. This is episode 6. I am Hutch Jr. in studio number 1 in Brookline in the city of Pittsburgh.
And I'm Ward Miller, also in the city of Pittsburgh, hiding out in the Fortress of Solitude.
There you go. And we had a really big couple weeks of news, Ward. This is probably one of the biggest news weeks since at least the election, and probably before that internationally.
Yeah, definitely. It's crazy because you go from it's really weird the way the news cycle works. You know, you go from having absolutely almost nothing to talk about, which we really don't have that problem because there's always something for us to talk about. But, you know, from it, you know, being our normal, you know, 5 or 10 things we could talk about a show, we're having to pare stuff out.
A lot of it out. I mean, there's things that are going on. What we're trying to do is bring you the news that's going to actually affect you. And other than the elections, domestic politics, there really hasn't been that much, but there is this week. I think we'll get started with the emails right away. We got an email, Ward, from Mike, and he says, on episode 5, you're talking a good bit about the media and how one-sided it is. I've given up on cable television news except Jim Lokay for traffic. That's a local guy in the city of Pittsburgh, ladies and gentlemen, for a long time. I just wanted your take on some of my alternative news outlets. Okay, maybe this can be lumped in cable news of a sort, but what is your take on The Daily Show and maybe less in a news capacity, Colbert Report? I enjoy the humor, but mostly I like how it takes a look at the media you guys are talking about and the double talk going on by the news anchors, pundits, and politicians. My other take on news is from No Agenda with Adam Curry and John C. Dvorak. I honestly haven't listened to them in a while because their 2 times a week at over 2 hours apiece was depressing the hell out of me. But they do a similar job at parsing all of the news and media and the tactics they use to manipulate the public mind share. It sometimes gets really conspiracy theorist, but was a great alternative angle on what was going on. You can catch them at www.noagendashow.com. I'm enjoying the show. I really think having a sideshow like this gives Hutch the chance to expand on his political talk in a way that would be handcuffed in the confines of BEV. That's my other show, Berg's Eye View. And the combination of the two of you is great, and having points of view from literally across the nation is a great perspective. Keep up the great work. If you're not pissing someone off, you're doing it wrong. Well, thanks, Mike. We appreciate you writing the show, and I guess we'll just analyze this a little bit. I haven't had a chance to listen to the No Agenda show. However, that's on my list. I'm going to check it out.
I've listened to No Agenda, and Mike's right. It's kind of like they report on the news, sort of, but everything has such a conspiracy theorist spin to it that it makes it depressing. I mean, Dvorak and Adam Curry are really good. They're very well spoken. But the problem that I have, like I said, with the shows, I listened to it a couple times, and it just got to the point where, you know, it's just all this conspiracy theory stuff makes me a little nuts.
Yeah, it does get to be a little much. I've heard that on other venues. Mike, one of the things that you can do, and you've heard this on the show before. Ward has analyzed it pretty well. You have to work to get your news. I mean, the day of the networks having a monopoly on what we talk about is over. The dangerous part is ensuring that you get balanced news. Now, if you're going to listen or watch The Daily Show and the Colbert Report, that's fine. Understanding that they're not news outlets, number one. And number two, that every story that you hear is going to have a left-wing slant to it. And that's just a fact. That's just those two guys, and to a much worse extent, Bill Maher, are left-wing perspective people.
Yeah, and part of it, too, I think, is the how can I say this with pissing off everybody? The basically, most of the media has a left-wing perspective to it. Most of Hollywood has a left-wing perspective to it because, it's all this kumbaya crap that keeps screwing up, everything. because it's like, okay, well, everybody's got to feel good and blah, 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 blah. And you got to be nice to one another and you got to do, no.
Well, the thing is, you can trace it back to the anti-war movement of the 1960s. I mean, that's where, because I'd add another pillar of education in there too. I mean, it's the media, Hollywood, the educators, and the politicians on the left. And they've basically, and actually, they've co-opted some politicians on the right. And that's where you're seeing a rift happening right now in the Republican Party. You've got all those pillars that we listed, including the ones in the establishment GOP that consider themselves the ruling class of the United States. They think in their heads that they are smarter and better than you and I. And that's just a fact.
Yeah, and the bottom line is people got to understand that these politicians work for you. You're the boss. And you decide whether or not they can continue to work once every 4 years. So what you need to do is you need to figure out, look it up. Who's your representative? What's his voting record? Is he voting the way that you'd like to see your stuff voted on? And if not, you send a message you can communicate with them and say, look, I don't really like the way you did this. A lot of times they'll respond to you and, they'll send you a letter and say, well, this is what this is why I voted on this. This is why I voted on that, or this way or that way, whatever. But at least that way you know what their thinking is. And then if you come down the road and you say, you know what, I really don't like the way you're thinking, I'm going to replace you. And in 4 years, you have that ability to do so. I encourage everyone to start getting involved with, if not local politics, national politics. Start at local. Look at your congressmen, your state senators, or your state senators, your House of Representatives. Follow what they're voting on.
And you did that this year. This cycle, you shook up the Pennsylvania legislature big time to the point where they're having shouting matches because the people that got elected in are trying to forward the message that they got from their constituents and change the rules, and they will eventually, but it's a circus right now. Unfortunately, at the national level, being that this is the Steel City Resistance, the Democrat machine is pretty ensconced in power. I mean, they've got a machine that, Mike Doyle, my representative in Congress, didn't even campaign. And he won with, I don't know how many huge percentage of the vote. So it's going to take people like Mike, the young people, to understand that Doyle has voted for every single program that the left has put forth since he's been in Congress. If you believe in those programs, and that's your guy. But understand that he's the one that did it.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, too, you look at the amount of spending that the federal government has done in the last 2 years, it's just ridiculous.
It's beyond comparison with any other nation in the world ever.
Yeah, and instead of coming out at the State of the Union and the president saying, look, what we're going to do is we're going to scale back these programs, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. No, he said we're going to have a freeze.
And we're going to build a high-speed train line, and we're going to invest this, invest that.
Yeah,
with
a high-speed train line. Okay. Right now, the federal government backs Amtrak, right? Amtrak has 44 routes. Of those 44 routes, 42 of them are not profitable. They don't make a profit on 42 of the 44 routes. The government backs Amtrak. So they're saying, we're going to put up a high-speed train, a bullet train, because all the other communist countries have one, we should have one.
And the thing is, if you're a journalist, the most important thing when I go to get my news, the most important tenet in my head when I'm choosing is honesty. You have to be honest before you can be a journalist. It just goes without saying. Without honesty, everything else is not even worth listening to.
Or even being honest is exactly it, because like Cronkite was a big Democrat. But when he was reporting, you couldn't tell what his political leanings were. And that's the way the old school guys were, and that's the way it should be.
It needs to be. I mean, I think that it started a long time ago, but I remember when ABC got caught fudging a car report. I can't remember the details, but and also George Bush with his National Guard record.
Yeah, where CBS was doing that. And the thing is, when they got called on it, they had to do something.
To me, as soon as they got caught doing that, and there was a journalist at the New York Times, too, that got caught plagiarizing an article. But to me, they should immediately, especially if it's something like Rather. Rather was one of the big three on the networks, and he was their anchor man. He was the face of CBS News. They should have immediately lost their constitutional protection. I mean, this government doesn't work if the media doesn't work. And that's where we are right now. That's the only reason that a guy like, I hate to polarize it like this, but Barack Obama in the Senate had the most left-leaning voting record in the entire Senate. He was to the left of Ted Kennedy. He should have got vetted in the press, and he did not.
No. There was a lot of stuff that didn't happen with Obama coming through the way he did. I mean, there was a lot of missed opportunities.
Directly related to the left-wing press corps. I mean, it just...
Oh, yeah, because he was the left starling. And I think what happened is, and in hindsight's 20/20, right? You think about it, the New York Times endorsed John McCain. Do you think that they endorsed him over, I don't know, Huckabee, Mitt Romney, whoever, because they didn't think that Obama could have beat one of those guys?
Yeah, it's all skewed. Just before we go too far into this, Mike, one of the things that I do, and I know Ward does too, is some things have popped up on the internet called news aggregators. And a couple of them that will point out discrepancies in media coverage. BigJournalism.com is a good one, and Newsbusters.org is a good one. And there are numerous news aggregators that just compile stories from all over the place and put them on their sites. And I think maybe we'll work on listing a couple more of those on the website, so you can go right there. But just one last thing on this, Mike, I want to show you, and this is about a 4-minute clip from Bill O'Reilly's show, which has nothing to do with Bill O'Reilly. It has to do with, what's his name, the Daily Show guy.
Jon Stewart.
Jon Stewart, and his intellectual and fundamental dishonesty. Give a listen.
Personal story segment on another round with our pal Jon Stewart. Earlier this week, Stewart took on the Congressman Steve Cohen Nazi controversy. You may remember this.
They say it's a government takeover of health care. A big lie, just like Goebbels. You say it enough, you repeat the lie, you repeat the lie, you repeat the lie, and eventually people believe it. The Germans said enough about the Jews, and the people believed it, and you had the Holocaust.
Well, Cohen was roundly criticized for that statement for two reasons. First, because he compared those who oppose Obamacare as spreading Nazi-like propaganda, a falsehood. And second, he did that just days after President Obama called for civility in the national debate in a speech in Arizona. Congressman Cohen made a huge mistake, no question. But Jon Stewart sees it a bit differently. He did not defend Cohen. He didn't defend the man. But he believes there's hypocrisy in play and that I, your humble correspondent, am a part of it. If you look back at what happened in Germany, you cannot escape the similarities between what Hitler and his cutthroats did back then and the hate-filled blogs, what they're doing now. That clip was from February 28, 2008, and it was edited by the Stewart folks. They played it on the broadcast. Here's the whole thing. Israel Gopstein, Silver Spring, Maryland. Mr. O'Reilly, I'm surprised at your lapse of judgment, comparing the tactics of the Nazis to the Huffington Post. I lost many members of my family to the Holocaust, and the meaning of their deaths means more than a comparison to a meaningless blog. Now, first of all, I appreciate your letter very much, sir, and I've thought about it. If you look back at what happened in Germany, you cannot escape the similarities between what Hitler and his cutthroats did back then and the hate-filled blogs, what they're doing now. And here is the context to that letter and that statement. On February 17, 2008, Nancy Reagan fell down, and had to be taken to the hospital. Shortly after that, this appeared on the Huffington Post. Quote, like her evil husband, she has lived far too long. Here's hoping the hag suffers for several weeks, then croaks in the tub. Unquote. Now, I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that my comparison to the vile Nazi propaganda machine is dead on. You can make the call on that. Jon Stewart didn't mention Nancy Reagan or the context of my remarks. He just used a short clip of a much longer statement. No setup whatsoever. If Stewart were a journalist, I would pound him into pudding. But he's not. He's a comedian, and as such, has license to take things out of context for entertainment purposes. However, there are some Stewart viewers, even media people, who do form conclusions based upon Stewart's expositions. And I submit there is not one Stewart viewer, not one, who had any idea that a vicious attack on Nancy Reagan prompted my analysis that Stewart used. Okay? They didn't know that. Sophisticated viewers understand Jon Stewart's a satire guy, and the fact is a valid target for satire, no question. But let the buyer beware with the blending of humor with serious issues. The cold truth is, Congressman Cohen directed his remarks at Republicans who oppose Obamacare and classified them as using Nazi propaganda techniques. That's what he did. I pointed out a hateful posting on the Huffington Post that should never have appeared, should have been taken down. The call for someone to endure a painful death because of her political beliefs does not deserve to be posted on any blog. And I compared that to the Nazi propaganda dispatches. They did that stuff all day long. Did they not? If Jon Stewart believes comparing me to Cohen is a valid comparison, he's entitled to his opinion. But I stand on my commentary. It was far different than what Congressman Cohen put out there. Indeed.
Okay, so you can see, I mean, that's just dishonest. I mean, there's no room. You can't get your news there, Mike. You can get your entertainment there all day long, but you can tell these shows, they deal in real quick sound bites, and there's no investigation and there's no objectivity. I mean,
and at the same time, it's creative editing, right? It's kind of like those Coors Light commercials where they have the football coaches up there that were actually taken from a press conference. They take their whatever they said, they clip it, and they use it out of context. And it's funny.
Yeah, it is funny. And I mean, it serves their purpose.
But you can't believe that, Barry Switzer actually had this conversation with these guys.
And I mean, their mission is they think you're stupid too. All you have to do is listen to their commentary. I mean, they've all been caught thinking that you're just Homer Simpson. And they're thinking that you can be swayed with those little bites to get you to nudge you to go where they want you to go. But, hey, we got a really big story, Ward. I mean, this one has me worried in a lot of ways, which I'll discuss in a second. But let me just run over a little bit of a timeline on what's going on in Egypt. This is nuts. I mean, on the 18th, a 25-year-old unemployed man dies after setting himself on fire in the northern city of Alexandria. Let me set this up a little bit. Back in the 60s, Egypt started getting in armed conflict with Israel. And, I mean, there was a string of them. You remember it, Ward. It was on the TV all the time.
Oh, yeah.
With Nixon. I mean, Nixon actually saved Israel. So you have all these wars. And then in 1980 or 81, Jimmy Carter managed to get Anwar Sadat, who was it's hard for me to call somebody a president when they're wearing a military uniform, but I guess he was the president of Egypt, Anwar Sadat. And he got them to sit down with Israel, and we brokered a peace deal, which has actually lasted to this day.
For 30 years.
But right after he signed that, his own army assassinated him. I know you'll remember that also, Ward. That was on live TV when he was conducting a passing review, and his soldiers gunned
open fire on him.
Yeah, and threw grenades, and it was right on television. It was actually pretty tragic at the time. But anyway, the head of the Air Force, Hosni Mubarak, took power and claimed that he would only serve 1 6-year term as Egypt's president. He's been there ever since. So, although a tyrannical dictator by some people's terms, Israel hasn't gotten invaded since, and like Sharia-type law and radical Islam hasn't taken hold in Egypt. But then a series of things happen. On the 20th, you have 2 Egyptians injured setting fire to themselves. On the 24th, Leading opposition figure Mohammed El-Baradi says opponents of Egypt's long-running regime should be able to follow the lead set by the toppling of Tunisia's president, which had happened a few days before. And it kept on escalating to the point where the Egyptian police have basically given up on this struggle, at least in some sectors of the country, and the military has come into the streets. And I got to say, behind my shoulder, I even have the news. And just one more thing on the news. I watch Fox News. And I'm not talking about the commentary. I'm talking about from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. with Brett Baer and Juan Williams is on there. They show both sides of the story. But I just thought I ought to get that out there for Mike. But it's getting to the point where the protesters started initially cheering the military when they came in the streets, but it quickly changed. I mean, now I've seen footage today with citizens, protesters throwing stones at APCs and whatnot.
Yeah, but here's the thing: I don't know if the APCs are the police force or they're military.
No, they're the military. They came into Cairo
because from what I understood was that the military was the ones that weren't basically attacking the protesters.
Well,
I mean, there was a lot of video captured where, people who were, these protesters would climb on the tanks with the military, and the military wasn't, messing with them. I mean, really, if you think about it, you go climbing on a tank, there's 100 different ways you could be removed quickly. So that being said, I think that the military is more I can't even pronounce his name.
No, not anti-Mubarak. The military, the whole situation hinges on where the Army goes. So far, the Army is the only organization that has stood their ground with the Egyptian government. And you're right, they're not firing into the crowd. Although I have heard lately some looting's been happening. And you have gated communities of the what's the word? The elite. Okay, the richer people, and now you're starting to see looters. They actually went in to one of the museums and tore the heads off of mummies. I mean, this is developing. We don't have the whole story here. And I'm sure it's going to change.
And we probably won't for a couple weeks.
No, it's changed since I suggested that we look at it. It's changed 10 times. How many documents did I send you, in the last 2 hours? I mean,
yeah, there's been a bunch.
So we don't have the definitive answers right now. We do have a few things so far. As of about 2 hours ago, there are 62 dead, 2,000 injured, and this is a serious matter for a couple reasons. Probably the most urgent among them is that 7% of all world goods flow through the Suez Canal. And probably what we should have done, and maybe a different commander-in-chief would have done something, and maybe he did do it and I just don't know about it, but we should have dispatched somebody to the Suez Canal immediately, right away. If that thing closes up, you're looking at $10 a gallon gas.
Oh, easy.
So...
But then again, that's what Obama wants.
It's possible, yeah. I mean, he does want energy prices to skyrocket. But the other two things that concern me, I did not realize that this is why it's important how this turns out, and we've actually already laid the groundwork. I didn't realize that Egypt is the number 2 top recipient of United States foreign aid. I had no clue. I did not know that. They get more aid than any country in Europe, the only country that gets any more aid than Egypt is Israel. Israel's the top one. That's why you see M113A3s out there in the street. That's American hardware, some of that.
Yeah, and I think part of that too is that may have been part of the peace accord that was signed with Jimmy Carter.
No doubt.
There's no telling what kind of promises got made. So that, I mean, granted, it lasted for 30 years.
Yes, it worked. I mean, the thing you got to understand, that Egypt's in North Africa. I mean, it's the Middle East, okay, but it's in the continent of Africa, but they share a pretty nice sized border with Israel, and that's huge. I mean,
oh yeah,
if you have a government, just for instance, put I need a dinner jacket in charge of Egypt. Now you have this big border, and you got a guy like that that's in power.
Oh yeah, and they'll be lobbing bombs in a New York second.
And with Egypt's arsenal, they can roll tanks in. They've done it before, 4 or 5 times.
With Egypt's arsenal, they can drop tactical nuclear weapons. You know, the thing is, it's the 800-pound gorilla in the room that nobody's willing to talk about. Israel has nukes.
True.
They have to. They're
sure. It's the only reason they're still there.
That's exactly.
Them and us.
Exactly. They want to be able to defend themselves. And they have nuclear weapons. And they've had nuclear weapons, and anybody that doesn't believe it is out of their mind. And if Iran, finally gets to build them their bomb, which the dinner jacket needs so bad, and they build their bomb and they launch one of them at Israel,
it's on.
It will rain fire like they can never imagine.
Yeah. Now
because they can only build one, maybe 2. I think their centrifuges are all screwed.
That was good. that
which is funny, but I think that's their problem. Is their centrifuges are all screwed up. They got to get them and rebuild all that stuff. Once they do that and they can actually enrich uranium, I have no doubt in my mind that they're the first bomb that they make, the first nuclear warhead that they have.
No, the paint won't dry.
They're shooting it right at Israel.
Yeah, the paint won't dry on it. Now, the other thing that worries me a little bit is I'm having flashbacks of 1979 in Iran and what happened there. I mean, that went from, granted, the Shah of Iran was a totalitarian, authoritarian person. But
so is this guy, too.
But Iran was thriving at the time. I mean, they were pretty westernized.
Yeah, and that was what was weird about it, because usually you get political dissidence when the economy is in the crapper. And you're right. At that time, Iran was thriving. Everybody was employed. You had the hardline extremists that actually came in and moved the country into reverse.
And it never ends well when that happens. I mean, these people are repressed so bad now, and that's what makes me nervous about this situation, because so far demonstrators in Egypt have protested against poor living standards and authoritarian rule. But as New York Times is reporting, religion may soon play an increasingly integral role in mobilizing anti-government forces. Now, in Egypt, you have a group it's a political group. It's called the Muslim Brotherhood. And I think the last time I looked, they only had about a third of the population behind them, maybe even a little less than that. And Mubarak was brutal with them. He took their leaders and put them in prison. You know what I mean? He didn't want the radical Islamification of his country.
Yeah, well, the thing is, too, the Muslim Brotherhood or whatever, they were the ones that spawned the Taliban.
Sure.
They spawned Al-Qaeda. They are the parent, the parent company of Al-Qaeda.
Right, and you've got CARE. I mean, they're all intertwined. I mean, it's been proven. But with organizers calling for demonstrations after Friday prayer, the political movement will literally be taken to the doorsteps of the nation's mosques. And as the Egyptian government and security services brace for the expected wave of mass demonstrations, Islamic groups seem poised to emerge as wild cards in the growing political movement. Heightening the tension, the Muslim Brotherhood, the largest organized opposition group in the country, announced Thursday that it would take part in the protest. The support of the Brotherhood could well change the calculus on the streets, tipping the numbers in favor of the protesters and away from the police, lending new strength to the demonstrations and further imperiling President Hosni Mubarak's reign of nearly 3 decades. So that's disturbing.
Yeah, well, the first thing he did, it was funny because they talked to, a lot of people don't like Joe Biden. I love him.
He's fun to watch.
No, I really do. I enjoy watching him because he makes me feel smart.
Yeah.
He came out and they said to him right after the I don't want to call him riots. The protesting started, and they asked him if he thought Mubarak was a dictator, And he says, dictator? No way. He's a really nice guy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, come on, Joe. You can't say the
He's
best
wearing a military
response to
uniform.
that is we have no comment on this right now. We're still evaluating, blah, 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 blah. You know, you don't. What the hell was Obama doing letting Biden walk around while this is going on? Well, they probably chased him out of the room.
It's bizarre that the things that come out of this White House. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Well, the other thing too is when Gibbs said he was stepping down, Obama comes out and goes, "Well, you know, he has to get a better job because he's not making. You know,
that was horrible.
You know, he makes so little money.
But it tells you a lot about him.
Yeah, but he makes $175,000 a year.
The ruling class thinks they're entitled to that. Now, one of the stories that we didn't cover here that'll be of interest to our listeners is Hosni Mubarak the other day shut down the internet.
Well, not only did he shut down the internet, he also shut down all communication. He shut down cell phones and whatnot. And here's the thing that I want our listeners to pay attention to. The internet kill switch that he threw is the same thing that Obama's trying to get pushed through Congress right now.
It's insidious.
Because that's the way that you keep people from communicating. That's the way you try and squelch public opinion. If you can't get on, you know, I mean, these social networking sites that a lot of people have, you know, that they're just learning about or whatever, Facebook, Twitter, that kind of thing. The way I look at Twitter is it's the nerve center for the internet.
Absolutely. I mean,
and everything that happens goes across Twitter. I mean, when there's I've seen, you know, Twitters for earthquakes, and I've known earthquakes were happening well before it was ever announced on the news.
And I mean, that's one of the most important aspects is that the reason that the Egyptians shut down the internet and communications is not so they couldn't talk to each other. It's so we don't know what's going on. It's so this is one of the reasons that.
Well, it's a combination.
Right, it is.
Because they also don't want the Egyptians to see the protests that are going on here in support of them.
Exactly. Now
they don't want, the president's going to say, you know, nobody cares about you, blah, 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 blah. You know, you're on your own. I'm here to help you. He went out and he fired his whole
his cabinet,
his entire cabinet. He swore in a vice president today. I think, you know, it's one of them things. It's too little, too late.
Yeah, that's not going to work. People have even said that already.
Yeah, and the fact that you know, it's like, okay, well, we swore him in. You know, we got rid of Sadat. Do the math.
Now, a lesson to be learned here about what I was speaking earlier about the ruling class and the establishment GOP being almost no different than the progressives that are running the Democrat Party. This bill to kill free speech in the United States, first introduced last summer by Senator Joe Lieberman and Susan Collins, Republican Maine. Now, we already got rid of Lieberman. But what is Collins doing introducing a bill that has anything to do with anything like this?
Well, it's one of them things where they can call it – they play on your paranoia, right? And they said during a national cyber emergency. All right, who's going to declare what a cyber emergency is? Does it mean that there's an attack coming against, you know, an internet attack against our power grid? Is that what they're talking about? Or are they talking about, you know, all communication?
And I mean,
you know, so they're going to shut off Facebook and Twitter because, you know, somebody's attacking the power grid.
I mean, a red flag goes up immediately when you see something like this. The revised version includes new language saying that the federal government's designation of vital internet or other computer systems shall not be subject to judicial review. If you ever see that in any bill, flags should go up immediately. I don't care what heartstrings or what fear buttons they're pushing. I mean, that's unnecessary in any legislation of any type. There are three branches of government, and you don't take one of the branches out.
Yeah, because the bottom line is, I mean, it's like the Obamacare bill. You know, that's going to end up getting shot down because the judicial system is allowed to look at it.
Absolutely. It's the only thing that's going to save us.
Hopefully. But I mean, that's one of the things. And you really have to have, I mean, the checks and balances got to be there. And you don't want the federal government any government to be able to decide what you can and can't say.
Absolutely not.
I mean, that's taking away free speech on the internet.
And I mean, I've even heard people that I associate with on Twitter, that don't have a problem with this and think that the net neutrality is okay, and they think it's about bandwidth. It's not about bandwidth, ladies and gentlemen.
No, the whole that's about tiering and these companies making a hell of a lot more money. They want to be able to say, prioritizing bits, and this bit is more important than this bit. And, you want to stream Netflix? Well, you can stream Netflix, but you got to pay an extra $15.
You want Rush Limbaugh? Oh, yeah, we can do that, but it's going to cost you a little more.
Exactly.
It's never about what they say it's about. It's always about power.
Yeah, power and money.
And they're synonymous a lot of the time.
Absolutely, because you got to figure all these cable companies, Time Warner, Comcast, Verizon, they're all in bed with the politicians.
Certainly.
I mean, they have people that do nothing but hand these guys money and say, you vote our way.
Something else. I think we're going to start throwing a little sunlight on all this stuff, though. I truly do. I hope ISSA is hard at work. Something else happened with the healthcare situation. It seems like the waiver list is up pretty high, Ward.
Yeah, apparently for some reason a bunch of these unions that were so far behind the Obamacare that really championed it are getting waivers.
I think it's up to like 700 companies now.
Yeah,
that's what I heard.
And it's basically all these companies that gave money to Obama.
And the thing is I remember distinctly going through my news aggregators. The good thing about going to those is you can see video in their own words. And I saw some video from the Asks Me union for federal and state workers and whatever, totally behind Obamacare. I mean, just preaching that we should have it. They were so enthusiastic about getting this thing passed, and then they turn around and get a waiver on it. It's just
because they
intellectually dishonest.
Yeah, because they know the bottom line is it's gonna kill their union if they keep it.
The thing
because
is,
their union has to pay for it.
But the thing is, the dishonesty of these union leaders, they're all in it. If it doesn't get knocked down, they're all in it come 2014. The waiver only lasts 2 years, or however many years. It's not forever.
No.
I mean,
the thing is, it'll last until it gets repealed.
True.
But the thing is, too, I mean, a lot of people think that I'm just a hateful jagoff who doesn't really like Obamacare and I don't like Obama and blah 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 blah. I have a true story here. I have a friend of mine who is a diabetic, and she had she had been on welfare and whatnot for a while, and she inherited some money, so she got off welfare. She went back to school. She used her own money to pay for health care. All right, she got her own plan, the whole 9 yards, and they said that she had to be on for 3 years, and there's some kind of a grace period, some kind of a reward. I don't remember what it was. After 3 years, 3 years come up, she goes back to renew her policy, and they said, we're folded. We can't afford this.
Well, that's what's happening with Medicare. The doctors are getting off of it because the payments are going down.
Well, the payments are already down.
Right.
Basically, what happens is if you're on Medicare, right, and the hospital says, okay, you had an MRI and that's going to cost you $700. They submit all that stuff to Medicare, right? Your bill, we'll say for argument's sake, the bill ends up being $1,000, right? It goes to Medicare. Medicare says, we'll pay you $250.
Right.
And the hospital has to take that.
And then you get the reverse effect of that, and that's where you get your $300 aspirins. The hospital has to make money to keep the doors open.
Yeah, and everybody thinks for whatever reason it is that they're there just to, be there to help people. And they are. But at the same time, you got to pay the people that work there.
Yeah, you're not going to get somebody.
Doctors and nurses. I mean,
who's going to go to an additional 10 years or more of school to not get paid? They got to at least pay that tuition back.
Well, the other thing too is, I mean, that's why it's so costly to go to just to talk to a doctor, because the doctor has to have malpractice insurance, and it costs a lot of money for that malpractice insurance. So to cover himself,
hundreds of thousands of dollars a year.
That he's not going to take that hit, so he's going to pass that on to you. All this stuff about what are we going to do about healthcare and blah 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 blah. The way to fix healthcare is really simple. You don't need a 2,000-page book on it. Number one, tort reform. If you go to a doctor and he mistakenly leaves a sponge in you, okay, that's an issue. But if you're going to a gynecologist, some children are born
with autism,
with some sort of malady. That doesn't mean it's the doctor's fault.
Incidentally, that's how Edwards made his money.
Yeah, and that's what exactly you get these lawyers, and that's why nobody in Washington wants to back that, because they're all lawyers or were lawyers. That's number one. Tort reform. You get tort reform, prices of medication of medical care start to drop because the doctors don't have to carry as much malpractice insurance.
Now, just an aside, real quick, you can tell, and most thinking people realize this, and I'll use the term again, the intellectual dishonesty of Obamacare. Tort reform was not mentioned in the bill. There's 2,500 pages, and we didn't talk about the single most cost-driving factor of healthcare.
Yeah. Well, the second thing is what you do is you make it competitive.
Across state lines.
Right? You cross the state line.
Yep.
You know what? If I could buy better health care insurance in Nevada, I should be able to.
And if I'm in Nevada and I have a system that works with insurance, I should be able to sell nationwide.
Exactly.
It's both ways.
Exactly. And what does that do? That generates competition between the insurance companies. Competition is never bad.
Nope.
Don't ever let anybody tell you competition is bad. That's part of capitalism.
And 2,500 pages is never good.
No, that 2,500 pages, most of it was earmarks. A lot of it was paying off the different senators and congressmen who voted for it.
And it gave the
with
chairman,
the Louisiana Purchase and whatnot, and all that garbage that was in there. That was ridiculous.
And it gave the chairman of the Health and Human Services almost unlimited power over your life. Almost unlimited.
Yeah, and on top of that, who's going to enforce this? The IRS.
Exactly. Now,
the IRS should be disbanded totally.
I think we're going to come toward that too.
If you go to a flat tax system, flat tax benefits everybody. Everybody pays something.
I think there'll be enough momentum to do that. The thing that's going to have to happen is, and you're going to see it during the next 2 years, so keep your eyes open, ladies and gentlemen, let's just call them the Tea Party movement. The people that want to get back to smaller government and sanity is really what we want to get back to. We got to get rid of these Snows and these establishment people that are going to, from our side, are going to impede us getting to where we need to be.
Yeah, the last thing we need is rhinos. You need people that are going to go in and say, look, this is the right thing to do. I'm not going to vote for it because everybody else says it's cool, or vote against it because I was told I have to by party lines. They're going to stay. I really would love for these, congressmen, especially the newly elected congressmen and senators, to say, hey, there's a big vote coming up. You know what? I'm going to go back to my district and I'm going to see what they say.
Yeah.
That's what they should be doing. They shouldn't be sitting in Washington, staying in Washington. A big thing comes up like the health care bill, and they just sit there and go, yep. When nobody in their district, and I'll give Jason Altmaier this for the state of Pennsylvania. Altmaier was one of the ones who stepped up and said, nobody in my district wants it. He voted no as a Democrat. And I give him all the props in the world. Once again, like I said before, this show isn't, Republican versus Democrat. This show is right versus wrong.
That's exactly right. That's a good way to put it. And right now, and it wasn't always the case, but right now, the right seems to be more right than the left. I mean,
yeah, well, I mean, it's one of them things where, you know, and I don't know if Altmaier did it, you know, voted the way he did as a political thing because he knew that this was coming. But I think that you're going to see, you know, with the current Congress pushing for, you know, the Senate to vote on the repeal of the health care, Harry Reid's going to have to call the thing to a vote.
Yeah, there's other ways for them to force that, but
once they force it to vote, these people that voted against it, you know, and their time's coming up.
Absolutely. Now we're running out of time here, so we're not going to be able to get to every story that we have, which is a good thing. But there was a bizarre development over the last couple weeks that I can't pass up because initially when it came out, I thought it was I actually thought this was some type of trickery. Hawaii has to me, he seems like a loony governor. He brought up the fact that, I mean, just out of the blue, I don't even know where this came from, and that's why I thought it was trickery, because nobody was talking about Obama's birth certificate anymore. And he came out. Well,
there's still some factions on the internet that are.
But I mean, the national conversation wasn't really going on, and I'm thinking, why did this guy bring it up again? He should have just left it die. I mean, it's not going to go anywhere. You're 2 years into the guy's presidency. What are you going to do now? You know, but anyway, the thing that was funny about it is this guy was swearing that he had this birth certificate, right? And then now it's missing or something. What's going on with that?
Well, first he came out and said, you know, we have it. It's in our possession, but state law says that we can't release it without his permission, right? And then right after that, there was a signed affidavit declaring that the long-form hospital-generated document was absent. They don't have it. Former Hawaiian elections clerk Tim Adams has now signed an affidavit swearing he was told by his supervisors in Hawaii that no long-form hospital-generated birth certificate existed for Barack Obama Jr. in Hawaii at neither Queens Medical Center nor the Kapolani Medical Center in Honolulu had any record of Obama being born in their medical facilities. Now, the thing that makes this odd is because this is getting traction again. All right? And there's already 4 states that I've seen. Arizona, I can't remember off the top of my I know Arizona was one of them.
Go figure.
That put a law in place that said in order to be on the ballot in the state of Arizona to run for president, you must present your birth certificate to the Arizona Attorney General.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. I agree with that 100%.
And there's 4 states that did. Well, you know, what kills me is when I went to the military, I had to give them my birth certificate.
You have to give one to get a passport.
Yeah. But, I mean, and now here's my thinking. Obama went to be the commander-in-chief. Why doesn't he have to present his birth certificate?
Yeah, I think
that's a military position.
I think it was just overlooked because we never expected to deal with it. And again, my position on the matter is let's use this as a learning tool. This guy's going to get voted out in 2012. Let's just not let this ever happen again. I mean, I don't think there's any worth. There's so many things going on in the country right now, and now, in addition, in the world, that I don't think we can waste any time worrying about it.
Well, what I think is going to end up happening is right before Obama starts campaigning again for his next term, the Supreme Court's going to hear this case.
You think so?
At that point, yes. And they're going to invalidate him at that point, and he won't be able to run again. I
don't even know if they take that case up. The thing is, though,
if they really push this, if they can really prove that that he was not born, I mean, really, technically, when he was born,
you covered that last week pretty well, or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
He wasn't
he
even
wasn't a
naturalized
citizen.
Right.
How can he be, so basically and one of the things I read, it was this big law opinion piece that said that because he wouldn't technically have been president, any law that he had signed during his tenure was null and void. So that could be a backdoor way of getting rid of Obamacare.
Yeah.
If they can push it.
And again, this has absolutely nothing to do, to me, with Barack Obama. This is all about if my brother was putting legislation forth the way this administration is, I'd have the exact same opinion, except I'd be wondering what went wrong.
Yeah, well, the thing is, if you do everything and you do it right, you get elected, and that's all well and good. But if you break the rules in order to get elected, and you seal your medical records and you seal your collegiate records with an executive order,
unreal.
That tells me that there's something you're trying to hide.
Absolutely.
When you use executive orders for that purpose, what are you trying to keep from the American public?
Really? I mean, that brings us to our next story, and this is probably my favorite story of the episode. I have a lot of faith in the American marketplace, and a couple different ways you can tell that the market is usually correct is most Americans, by and large, get their news from the Fox News channel, and MSNBC fired Oberman.
Yeah, I could actually see that coming.
Well, they got taken over by Comcast. Comcast bought, I don't know the exact titles of the companies, but Comcast bought controlling interest in NBC, I think.
Yeah. But I don't know how much impact that has on MSNBC, but I'm sure it has something, because they really did not like Oberman, and I guess the first shot that they got, once it was approved, they're like, you're gone.
Yeah, you're through.
And the thing is, if Oberman's the lefties' Bill O'Reilly,
except for the fact that. And I wanted to make this point during this segment. You will rarely hear a right wing, if you want to call him that, commentator demonize somebody. If they're calling somebody a name, it's because that it's true. Like George Soros, you can't take what he's done in his life and not call him a demon. I mean, that's definitive. He's crippled currencies around the world. It's documented. Yeah. But when you listen to Oberman and these other people, all of them on the left. I mean, you look at Oberman, Ed Schultz, Bill Maher, the things that they say about just people that have different opinions than them. I mean, they honestly get out there and say that George Bush lied, people died, he did this on purpose, and Palin is this, and Beck is this, and it's like, it's pretty easy to differentiate between the two styles to me.
Yeah, I mean, if you actually follow timelines and you start, you watch like Glenn Beck, and he starts showing you how you connect the dots and how you can trace, SEIU back to Soros, and and SEIU to Acorn,
and the communist people that are in the administration. I mean, self-avowed.
Yeah, Van Jones came out and said that he was a communist, and he believed that the United States had something to do with 9/11.
Signed a paper, signed a petition. But
that's just ridiculous.
I would give some advice to the audience, because Glenn Beck is one of those people that if you put something on Twitter, you're going to get hate tweets immediately. And the thing about it is the vast majority, I watch the show, and sometimes it's a little bit much, but the man has taught me things that I had no idea were true.
Well, the thing is, too, with Beck, he does his homework.
Oh, and completely.
And he documents. And the thing is, I wouldn't have a problem with Oberman doing that, or with anybody on the left doing that.
They can't.
You document something and you show me, how it comes about that Bush figured out that this was wrong and he committed 9/11 and all this other crap. You show me that, and you can prove it to me. I'll listen to you.
And do it without calling anybody any names. See if you can do that. Let's have a battle of ideas. But you can never do that. It always degenerates into Michelle Bachmann is a balloon head. You know, I mean, that's what Matthew said the other night. And it's like, how do these people still have jobs? I mean, Oberman.
What I don't understand is how Oberman was, he was so bad that he got thrown off ESPN and he becomes a political pundit. How does that work?
And I mean, if you go, the thing about it is, it's no small thing, because if you take the ratings of the top 10 shows, Fox News owned the top 8, and 2 of those top 8 were reruns. Oberman was number 9. So he was the best they had to offer.
And I don't think he was that good.
He was. I can't say I ever watched the show. I saw clips on the Blaze and on Drudge, but I never watched the whole show.
But he was basically a cheerleader for the left.
Yeah, I wouldn't waste my time. I mean, when you hear some of the statements, this is like a real guy. He's serious, and he's saying some of the things on his worst person of the week. And I mean, I remember when Scott Brown was running for Kennedy's seat in Massachusetts, and I mean, it was great. It was a happy time that maybe we can get this without, maybe we can save this. And he went on like a 10-minute diatribe about how bad this rhino was. And I mean, that's all he is.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, this guy's a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army Reserve, and you're talking about him like this. It's ridiculous.
Well, I mean, that's what they do. They throw bombs. And it doesn't. And the thing is, it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong, as long as it gets ratings. As long as it's sensational, put as many ratings on top as we can.
Yeah, and I mean, it has to go with the political agenda. But in other news, it looks like Congresswoman Giffords is getting a little better. My material isn't that up to date, but I understand she's in rehab now.
Yeah, they said she was able to take a couple steps. It's looking very promising. She still hasn't spoken, but they're still crediting that to the breathing tube. The breathing tube's still in place. So once they remove that, we'll see if she's able to talk and see exactly how much damage was done. But all signs point that she's going to make a recovery.
Well, that's good.
Which is just ridiculous, since she was shot in the head through and through.
Yeah, it came out the front. I don't want to let this story get past us. We're running out of time. But Ward, you want to cover something? This is the intellectual dishonesty of the media I'm talking about. There was an assassination attempt that I had heard about, but I'm pretty sure most of our listeners haven't.
Yeah, the Missouri Democratic Governor Jay Nixon was attacked by 22-year-old Casey Brezick, and there was no media coverage. He ended up slicing the throat of the guy that was standing next to him.
He got the wrong guy. I mean, he did this like Mujahideen style.
Yeah, big knife and stuff, and he tried to cut his throat. Now, here's the thing. Now, everybody that's listening, did you hear anything about this on the news?
Now, incidentally, you would have if you went to news aggregators or if you listened to Glenn Beck. Just saying.
But apparently, this guy was an anti-Christian, anti-capitalist leftist who participated in a number of left-wing protests, and he was a diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic. The Huffington Post went as far as reporting that this guy attacked the governor and he was just a paranoid schizophrenic.
He had a bulletproof vest on, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh yeah, he had every intention of he had bad intentions. But I mean, it's like the guy that attacked Giffords, automatically he was a right-wing kook job that was sent there by Sarah Palin, to do this, and it's like, what? How is that possible?
We have to.
How can you make that jump? And the thing is, I'm willing to bet you that if this guy had been, a right-wing nut job, that this would have been on the news, in the paper. You'd have never heard the end of it.
But this has to stop. I mean, this is a story that the nation needs to hear. This is not something that should be on an obscure internet blog somewhere or reported by one person. This should have been top story.
Absolutely.
I mean, we should know this guy's name.
It's not like what's the guy that attacked Giffords?
Jared Loughner.
Yeah, we know his name.
This
guy here, and I do not condone the fact that he went after an elected official. I do not condone that in any way, shape, or form. And the fact that it was a Democratic governor is the same as I felt about Giffords. She was a Democrat. It doesn't matter. She was serving her country the same as this guy is serving his state. And for this guy to attack him and the media cover it up just because they can't use it to get an angle on attacking somebody on the right.
Got to get a hold of this situation. I said it before, I think that the Tea Party demonstrations of next year ought to occur at the networks. We ought to shut the towns down. We got to get this media under control. It's horrible. I mean, I didn't even hear that on Fox.
No. Well, I think Beck said it on Fox.
But I mean on their news program.
Yeah.
That's one thing that you got to delineate from when we're having this conversation, because right away they'll mention Bill O'Reilly or Glenn Beck or something, and that's not what I mean. That's a commentary shows that I like, but it's not where I get my news from.
No, you can't. I mean, I'll watch Sean Hannity, but I don't take everything Hannity says as gospel truth. You can't, because
you got to trust the guy first. Not that I don't trust Hannity, but
but he's going to put his spin on
Hannity
it, because
has
that's
an
what
agenda.
he's expected to do.
Exactly, he has an agenda. He's paid to do that. But I do trust. O'Reilly. I do trust Brett Baer and the crew, the news crew at Fox.
And Megyn Kelly.
Megyn Kelly, and who did Brett Baer replace? He's on there every now and then. Now Britt Hume.
Britt Hume was very.
He was excellent.
Yeah, he just looked trustworthy.
And he would say, if a Republican or right wing person is screwing up, it's on there, baby. Believe it.
Oh yeah,
no doubt about it. Well, Ward, another good episode. A really busy week.
We gotta bring up the last thing, dude.
Which one?
The thing about Ling Lang.
Go ahead, go for it. Yeah,
just because I love the name Ling Lang. Well, apparently there was a Chinese pianist, and his name is Ling Lang or Lang Lang, whatever. And he came to play at the White House
at the state dinner.
For
President Xu Yang.
Nobody really understood, what he was playing. And he was playing the Battle of Shangalin Mountain, which is basically an anti-U.S. song
during the Korean War.
That was written during the Korean War that calls the counterattack of the U.S. military jackals.
Now, this is being played, ladies and gentlemen, in the White House.
Yeah. With the president sitting there with the president of China.
And I heard reports that Chinese that were watching this or listening to it or whatever, they know what the song is.
Oh, yeah.
And they were just ecstatic that they were able to penetrate the White House and do this from our piano, the piano we bought.
Yeah. It's one of the things where you didn't vet this guy.
I don't think they care. I think they probably knew.
I don't know. And that's the whole thing with this stupid ass bullet train. That still irritates the hell out of me.
The administration's in butt kiss mode when it comes to China.
The fact is nobody uses rail travel in the United States.
Oh, I agree. I wouldn't mind to see us do it, but I would like it to be commercial.
My thing is, though, it's like Amtrak. Amtrak's commercial. You can go get on an Amtrak train. Why don't you? Number one, they don't go anywhere you want to be.
That's the problem. They are great when you get on one. I have taken them, but I disagree completely with a nationalized rail line. I mean, there's rules with the tracks. There's different reasons why entrepreneurs can't get into it.
Well, the other thing too is that the tracks are made for older engines. They're not made to take a high-speed train.
Right.
Hell, we have these big-ass, basically cargo trains that are that are falling off the track because these tracks aren't maintained.
Yeah, the infrastructure's hurting.
You know, and the thing was, you know, that was the line he used to sell us the first stimulus bill, was it was all going to go towards infrastructure.
Yeah.
Then he comes into the State of the Union and says, our infrastructure is rated a D. Well, what happened to the $2 trillion that you got for infrastructure?
Unbelievable.
Nobody called him on that. Nobody in the media called him on that.
And ladies and gentlemen, with that, we're going to have to wrap it up. We just plain ran out of time. You can call the show at 412-254-3750. Email the show, steelcityresistance@gmail.com. Go to the website, steelcityresistance.blogspot.com. There's a lot of good stuff over there. We've actually started aggregating some of our own stories. Not as big as some of the big ones, but there's some interesting things that get posted from time to time. And we've had some requests to stream the show, and we're going to talk about that a little bit, and we might have some surprises coming up for you in the future. I don't know if we're going to be able to do it or not, but we're going to talk about it. We're going to explore it. So send us your thoughts, any topics you'd like us to talk about. Send them to the email spot, and we'll see what we can do. Ward, what do you think?
That works, man. I want to thank Mike for sending us that email that we got to talk about today, and we want more. I love hearing your opinions. If you don't agree with me, that's great. Tell me why you don't agree with me. Hell, we might even get you on the show and we can have a debate.
That's possible. Now, tell your friends about the show. The circulation's continuing to rise, but I'd like it to rise a little bit more. That's all I got from the Brookline Studio #1 this week.
And that's all I got here from this Fortress of Solitude.
Talk to you next time.
To voice your patriotism without the threat of being censored or shadow banned? Would you like to contribute to wounded veterans but don't know how? Would you like to communicate with like-minded conservatives without being trolled? If you answered yes, then Red Elephant, rdelephant.com is for you. Red Elephant is the new social media platform that will not censor or shadow ban you, and a portion of your sign-up fee goes directly to the Wounded Warriors Project. rdelephant.com.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening tonight. Listening on the weekend. We'll be back live tomorrow night for Cold War Radio. 8 p.m., ladies and gentlemen, 8 p.m. Eastern. Thanks for listening. And, yeah, this might work. Jacob Seals, ladies and gentlemen.
You are on WHBJ Digital Talk.
movement is about replacing a failed and corrupt political establishment with a new government controlled by you, the American people. The Washington establishment and the financial and media corporations that fund it exist for only one reason: to protect and enrich itself. The establishment has trillions of dollars at stake in this election. For those who control the levers of power in Washington and for the global special interests, they partner with these people that don't have your good in mind. Our campaign represents a true existential threat like they haven't seen before. This is not simply another 4-year election. This is a crossroads in the history of our civilization that will determine whether or not we, the people, reclaim control over our government. The political establishment that is trying to stop us is the same group responsible for our disastrous trade deals, massive illegal immigration, and economic and foreign policies that have bled our country dry. The political establishment has brought about the destruction of our factories and our jobs as they flee to Mexico, China, and other countries all around the world. It's a global power structure that is responsible for the economic decisions that have robbed our working class, stripped our country of its wealth, and put that money into the pockets of a handful of large corporations and political entities. This is a struggle for the survival of our nation, and this will be our last chance to save it. This election will determine whether we're a free nation or whether we have only the illusion of democracy, but are in fact controlled by a small handful of global special interests rigging the system, and our system is rigged. This is reality. You know it, they know it, I know it, and pretty much the whole world knows it. The Clinton machine is at the center of this power structure. We've seen this firsthand in the WikiLeaks documents, in which Hillary Clinton meets in secret with international banks to plot the destruction of U.S. sovereignty in order to enrich these global financial powers, her special interest friends, and her donors. Honestly, she should be locked up. The most powerful weapon deployed by the Clintons is the corporate media, the press. Let's be clear on one thing. The corporate media in our country is no longer involved in journalism. They're a political special interest, no different than any lobbyist or other financial entity with a total political agenda, and the agenda is not for you, it's for themselves. Anyone who challenges their control is deemed a sexist, a racist, a xenophobe. They will lie, and then again, they will do worse than that. They will do whatever's necessary. The Clintons are criminals, remember that. This is well documented, and the establishment that protects them has engaged in a massive cover-up of widespread criminal activity at the State Department and the Clinton Foundation in order to keep the Clintons in power. They knew they would throw every lie they could at me and my family and my loved ones. They knew they would stop at nothing to try to stop me. Nevertheless, I take all of these slings and arrows gladly for you. I take them for our movement so that we can have our country back. I knew this day would arrive. It's only a question of when. And I knew the American people would rise above it and vote for the future they deserve. The only thing that can stop this corrupt machine is you. The only force strong enough to save our country is us. The only people brave enough to vote out this corrupt establishment is you, the American people. Our great civilization has come upon a moment of reckoning. I didn't need to do this, folks, believe me. I built a great company, and I had a wonderful life. I could have enjoyed the fruits and benefit of years of successful business deals and businesses for myself and my family. Instead of going through this absolute horror show of lies, deceptions, malicious attacks, who would have thought? I'm doing it because this country has given me so much, and I feel so strongly that it's my turn to give back to the country that I love. I'm doing this for the people and for the movement, and we will take back this country for you, and we will make America great again.
You're listening to WHBJ Digital Talk from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, home of Cold War Radio. You can listen live 8 p.m. Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays.
In heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.